Okay, so we'll call the March meeting of the Troy Planning Board to order, and would you stand, please? We'll have a pledge of allegiance. Tony, will you lead us, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll note for the record that the full planning board is present, so you have a quorum. First item on the agenda tonight is,
Peter, do you want to call attendance?
pardon me,
You want to call attendance?
attendance. Sure. Member Scully.
Here.
Member Dixon.
Here.
Member Schulfeld.
Here.
Member York.
Here.
Member Keough, present.
Thank you.
You didn't trust me when I see everyone's present. Okay, so first order of business is to adopt the meeting minutes from the February meeting. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt the prior meeting's minutes.
I second.
Member Scully, Member Dixon, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is a matter's been referred to the planning board by the city council. An issue designating Project Road and Project Street between Campbell Avenue and Madison Avenue is Learning Way. So they've asked us to approve this or make a recommendation with respect to this to the council. And I understand that the county has some concern about using the term way in that it might denote private ownership of that street. So, and I think that has implications for the 911 system, I believe is the reason that they raised the concern. So it's your pleasure, I guess, to either recommend that they be renamed Learning Way or some alternative or what? Tony?
Okay, I like the recommendation by Miss Stewart's fifth grade class for Dorothy Street. I've read her bio. She's a very, very interesting Black woman that was born in Philadelphia, and at 5 months of age, her mother moved to Troy and placed her in what was to be Vander Heiden Hall as an orphan. Was there until she was 13 years old. And she has some of the highest ratings as far as a surgeon, going to college, was fostered by a family in Troy, which gave her a great background to do what she was able to do. They wanted to name the street Dorothy Street. I think Dorothy Brown Street. That's her name. And I was also wondering if perhaps if we named that street Dorothy Brown Street, if the class would like to have another project to do before the end of this school year, that they could request, I think it's the Department of Education, to have a plaque on that street to give a little bit of education about who Dorothy Brown was.
Okay. Is that in order? Appropriate?
Yes, we're just in discussion right now, right?
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Yeah. So I think that was in the newspaper or some supplement here a few years back. It was a very interesting story about her. So didn't read that myself. Anybody else have thoughts on this?
I mean, I like her idea. So I think, someone that's had that kind of an effect on this area, and we don't typically do a lot of that. There aren't that many streets in the city named after people that have had quite the accomplishment. So I think I like the idea of naming the street after her.
So it would be in order then for a resolution recommending to the council, to the city council, that they adopt that name?
Yes. And you could also add to the resolution the other recommendation that the council have the class. What was it again? I'm sorry.
It was Mrs. Stewart's fifth grade class that put out the Dorothy Street.
Right. And you wanted them to
possibly write to the Department of Education. I believe that's where they go to get a historical sign.
Historical marker, that was it, right.
Historical
Sure.
marker to put on the street.
Okay. Sounds fine to me.
All right, and so is that your motion, Tony?
Yes.
Yes, all right, and a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Dorothy Brown Street.
Thank you.
Next item is
And
2023.
Peter,
I'm sorry.
just to put on the record, I think that is in lieu of at least it's partly in lieu of learning way, because the county has objected to the term way
Right.
in any such street designation, because it denotes private rights of way, I think.
Item 2023-0028, 285, 289 River Street. The applicant, representative present.
Hi, I'm Natalie Seagriff. I'm the project manager for SWBR, the architect of record for the American Theater Project. So we are here to just formalize getting the EMCs, so the two digital displays that would be flanking the main entries through the site plan approval. As you know, it's a historic building. It's SHPO tax credit approved, and we'll be reconstructing the historic canopy. So this is all part of the SHPO conditions that we have to adhere to.
Just so everybody understands, we're talking about electronic lit signs, but they're actually, aren't they in place of what in the old days might have been posters?
Correct. Yeah, it's right where
So
the
they're vertical.
they're vertical. They're inset into the
Right.
facade. We have removed from the scope of work the digital marquee that was going to be hanging from the historic canopies. So that's been removed. So it's really just those two displays, plus the American sign, which is channel lettering with bulbs, which is also historic. So it would have been part of the fabric naturally had it not been removed.
So this, I was a little confused by this at first, because I was envisioning one of these traveling signs that flashing on and off and all that stuff. Is this going to be like look like a poster, only it's electronic?
Exactly. And so if you were to go to Proctor's Theater in downtown Schenectady, it would be the same sort of display. Static, maybe changing every so often, but certainly not something that is like flashing or rapid movement.
Okay, much more comfortable with that. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, I mean, just, how long do you think it is going to be before you guys start construction over there?
It's slated to start construction Q2 or Q3. It was supposed to start back in June, but they had delayed it because they were going to tie into the geothermal system that National Grid was starting to, implement, but that's not getting started till 2027, and they have funding that has to get used up before then.
So you're saying June?
Probably closer to August.
Okay.
Yeah, early fall maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Eric, where are we at with this right now? This has already been to the prior committee?
Yeah, this received previous approval, I think in June-ish of 2022. And one of their conditions for one of their conditions of approval is on every approval letter is that they apply for a building permit within 12 months. And they did. So they applied last January. So the EMC itself through our code dictates that they receive permission from the planning board. And I think there's been some letters and comments from the public you guys have been given, and it's kind of just as simple as that.
So it's already been approved, but they're seeking an additional approval for this electronic sign.
Right. So, I mean, I've provided you guys their site plan, but they're not here for site plan review.
Mhm.
Since they've gotten already, they've already hit the requirement under their approval letter to apply for a building permit. So the section of the code, I could bring it up for you if you'd like, but basically just states that planning board is required to be consulted before any use of an electronic messaging center. It has gone to the zoning board.
Hmm.
I think you guys in your staff notes have that detail. So per excuse me, I'm sorry, 285-72 F 9C. Electronic message centers must be approved by the planning commission prior to the director of code enforcement issuing a permit. So it's before you guys for
The,
approval.
the EMCs are barred in the downtown mixed use area. The zoning board of appeals granted a variance. And now they're coming back here because your approval is also required under the code for the use of these devices.
Now, do we have to move forward and then schedule another meeting for a hearing, or can we have a hearing tonight on this?
Tonight is the hearing for
Tonight-
this.
This is-
So you're
is
not
the
needing,
hearing, yeah.
you're not needing to declare an application complete or go through
Right,
seeker.
okay, so we can hear from the public.
Yes.
Yes.
I just have one question. If we approve this for the American Theater, does that mean that it would apply to anything else out there that would want a messaging center?
So that is an
Or it's
issue.
just specific to?
That is an issue. The zoning board attempted to, or stated that its approval was essentially limited to an EMC that would replace a former element that you could no longer, for instance, the posters, because I guess they're not even made anymore. And they also wanted their approval to be, they stated on the record that their approval was for a historic structure that was being rehabilitated pursuant to SHPO. So you could condition your motion that similarly, if you choose to. I will just caution you that every time you approve something, it's always a precedent whether you like it or not. But you could say why you're doing it. And if you're doing it for the same reasons the zoning board is that to make the theater project work in accordance with their funding, which is from SHPO, I guess. And that essentially you feel that these would be consistent with the historic elements of the structure, even though they're electronic. That might have the effect of, quelling someone else's ambition to have a cigarette sign in their window or something like that. Do you follow me? I'm sorry if I'm
Mhm.
being obtuse. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So do we want to limit it to
So
just the American
SHPO has
Theater?
seen all this and they're good with it, right?
Correct. Yeah, they've already gone through part 2 approvals with conditions, and there's a significant amount of tax credits that they're receiving for this project to move forward. Otherwise, it wouldn't, and it would sit in its state of disrepair. So.
Question. So I'm just trying to understand what's the objection to, an electronic sign. What's been the feedback and the reason why this, I understand the zone mixed use, but I mean, our transit system has electronic signs at their bus stops that are scrolling data across them. So I'm just trying to understand what
They do.
would be, why is this an issue even?
Not aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the transit signs, but this is the code that the council adopted,
Yeah.
which definitely bars EMCs in the downtown mixed use district. That they had to get a variance. And the code also requires the planning board to I guess, approve any EMC that has been allowed by variance.
So like you said, if we set a precedent here, this could open up more.
Everything you do in the past is a precedent for the future. That's if you can attempt to limit your approval to the unique circumstances of this case. If that's your wish, I think you can do that. And that will be an argument for lawyers later on.
I think I would like to limit it just to the American Theater, wouldn't you? And I think I would like to limit it to just the American Theater. And as we go forward, if someone else requests one, I think that needs to be taken into consideration as to where the building is, what it's going to be used for. Certainly this being across the street from other businesses, there's probably apartments on the top floors of some of these businesses. I don't know, but the American Theater is not that tall. I think I would like to limit it to just the American Theater right now for. Case by case. Yes, and do it case by case.
I think that's the intent of the zoning rule, to ensure that you guys review each one of these asks case by case.
And at night, the light's gotta be lower, right?
Correct. And, they could be turned off, obviously, after, hours are closed.
Yeah. All right, anything else for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see if any member of the public wants to speak on this proposal. Anyone present who wants to speak on this, come forward, please.
Evening, my name is Russ Brooks. I live at 37 First Street. I did send something to all of you through the planning board email. I was at the zoning meeting. I'm in favor of the project. I'm in favor of the EMCs that they're requesting because they replace the historic light boxes. We had the similar discussion with the zoning, but as Recode Troy requires that planning approved, the zoning was really approving the area variance request for 2 when citywide you're only allowed 1 EMC per property and downtown you're not allowed any. So it makes sense to replace those old historic light box posters with a current EMC. The zoning board also recommended that a draft amendment be presented to city council to alter the code because the code is really archaic, even though it was only passed in April of 2023. It says that you're only allowed to change the image once every 24 hours. It can only be 2 colors. It just wasn't well thought through. So I went home and I just asked ChatGPT to write me an amendment taking into consideration Troy's downtown multi-use district and the walkability and how would you deal with this. And as it turns out, we're not the only people that have the same situation. So it spit that out and that's what I sent to you, the cover letter. And I think that along with your approval, you can approve it and say it's just for the American Theater, but that still sets a precedent. You also want to request that the code be amended to include language that makes sense. And if you follow the logic in what the zoning board was saying about having just having the lighted box replace what was historically accurate for a lighted poster box, have the EMC replace that, there would only be the American Theater and Proctor's. There weren't any others. There are other buildings that were entertainment venues that had plaques and such or put up signs, but they didn't have the light boxes. So if you make that recommendation, and this is something that Rich would dig into, but I sent you what ChatGPT spit out for light, the ability to change it like every couple of minutes or something, or the ability to control the brightness. So I'd recommend that with your motion, you also make a recommendation that the Recode Troy be amended to include that language about what the EMC can be and where they're allowed to be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak? Okay, thank you. We'll close the hearing.
Nobody on the computer. Nobody on the
No,
computer.
nobody ends it.
Pardon me?
Nobody ends it.
No one online.
Okay, further discussion or a motion?
I think we could move to approve this EMC for this particular project. I'd like to move to do that.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Any interest in making the further recommendation?
I don't know what the procedure would be to try to get the city council to,
I think you can
Change
just,
the law.
you can make a resolution recommending a course of action to the council. Amending the current zoning, current land use and zoning ordinance to allow for use of EMCs in certain historic situations where they could be beneficial to the development of the city.
we don't have any of the other things in front of us right now with this issue at this point.
There are none others
So
pending
we,
before you.
so we have a little bit of time to work out
Sure.
the details
Yes.
and what we want to do. Maybe we got to
Defer.
think it through and then next meeting.
Okay, if someone wants to work on, could work with city staff, maybe to come up with language, we
Yeah.
can present it at the next meeting.
What do you think, Rick? You
Yeah.
have language?
Next meeting is ambitious as I'm the only one doing it, but
yeah, yeah.
possibly within
Well,
a couple meetings or
You know,
two.
if we don't have anything else.
I agree, it should be amended.
Okay.
All right, so we won't take any further action at this time, but subject to doing something in the future. All right. Next item is 2025-0007, 50 Water Plant Road.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Jim Ballantyne with Naparala Consulting here with Pete Uhas, the applicant with Lakeshore Construction. We had submitted previously some revised site plan materials, and I prepared a simple graphic just to kind of summarize those changes for you guys if you'd like to understand that prior to the public hearing this evening.
Want to see it? I think we're good, right?
So as I mentioned, my name is Jim Ballantyne here with Pete Uhas. This is for the the proposed utility building located over at 50 Water Plant Road. When we submitted plans back in February, we had some 4 minor revisions. I just wanted to quickly summarize. First was we shifted the building entrance to the opposite side of the building. As well, we extended the pavement edge around the west side of the property or the west side of the proposed building in order to provide better maintenance for the HVAC units that are mounted on the side of the building. As well, we added a gravel diaphragm for runoff and erosion mitigation in that area. And we also proposed a small block knee wall in order to accommodate the grade change in this area when we expand that
I'm sorry,
asphalt.
to accommodate.
The grade change with the asphalt extension in this area. So
Okay.
that just covers our revised materials.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Your motion?
I think is this public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, folks. Is there anyone here to speak on this proposal? No one here to speak on that proposal, so now we'll entertain a motion.
No, there's nobody online.
Pardon me?
Nobody online.
Motion. Is there a motion?
So Have they done? Sorry. Oh, it's type 2. I'm sorry. Forget it. Type 2.
Type 2, right?
No determination. That's.
So we can take action tonight on this project. Well, I move we approve this project, 2025-0007.
Second,
I second.
motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item is 2025-0001, 2751 Fifth Avenue. Is the applicant or representative here?
Good evening. My name is Kelsey Carr. I'm the civil engineer for the project with Labella Associates. I'm joined this evening by Samit Gupta with Five Corners Development, as well as Melissa Munoz with Home Leasing and Ken Syvertson with Syvertson Rugosu Architects. So we first presented this project to you guys back in January. So tonight we are here seeking potentially a seeker determination so that the ZBA can move forward with a decision on the area variance application that we've submitted. So just to give a quick recap, the project is proposing redevelopment of the former First American Towing and Recovery site, which has been vacant since early 2023. The proposed 5-story senior affordable housing building and the site improvements have been carefully designed to overcome the existing site constraints that include over 25 feet of grade change from east to west, shallow bedrock with areas of bedrock outcropping, as well as contaminated soils. So with all of these constraints, over 47% of the property area is unbuildable, despite the zoning allowing for 80% impervious coverage. So the existing building, as you can see from these photographs, is in very poor condition and has been condemned by the city. So the project is requesting 5 area variances that we presented to the ZBA on February 5th, and we're headed back to the ZBA on April 2nd. So tonight we want to just quickly provide you guys with an overview of those variances and the changes that have been made in the design to address comments received from yourselves, from the ZBA, as well as the planning staff. So the first variance is to allow the front door to face towards the north, where the code requires the front door to face the public street. So we feel that this orientation facing toward the ADA and visitor parking spaces out front and the accessible walkway that we're providing will improve pedestrian safety for the senior use. And the ZBA did not raise any concerns with this design. The next is roof form, where the code requires the use of either dormers or a variation in height to establish the roof form. Instead, our design uses different facade treatments and colors, as well as undulation in the building facade to achieve the same intent. And the ZBA seemed comfortable with this approach. The next variance is to provide a 3-foot front setback for the 6 proposed exterior parking spaces, where a 25-foot parking setback is required. This design is the only feasible location on this property to provide unrestricted ADA spaces, the exterior EV charging spaces that are required by code and requested to be exterior by the fire department, as well as a few visitor parking spaces. So there was some concern raised about the original design that included a 63-foot wide curb cut at this parking area, as shown in this site plan here. So based on the conversation that we had, we have revised the design to reduce the parking from 7 to 6 spaces and have provided a curbed island to split the parking into two separate 18-foot and 36-foot wide curb cuts. We feel that this design is more pedestrian friendly and will result in drivers turning in and out of the property at a slower speed. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken to discuss the other two.
Item. So by zoning, we're supposed to have a 50% ground floor, but we don't really have any retail use or anything, and our ground floor is actually being utilized for parking. So if we had 50%, all you would be looking into would be cars. But what we ended up doing was we did add some windows. Maybe. Page down. Oh. This is our revised design where we added windows to the ground floor with limited views into the parking structures areas.
Are they real windows or simulated or what?
I mean, they're gonna be real windows, aluminum, just looking exactly like the ones above it. And then one of their other concerns was building height. So we actually went out into the neighborhood and took some pictures. So the red dots are actually where the picture was taken, looking towards our building, and we superimposed our building into the views. So here you can see the behind the razor wire and chain link fence. You can see just the tip of our building there, and same thing there. So it's not really blocking anybody's view sheds because it's. We did update the floor plans a little bit. There was a pretty substantial grade change here, so we just nipped to this corner of the building. It doesn't really affect too much. We have the same number of units, and the layout's pretty much the same. And since it's the planning board, we included our materials, which haven't changed, but we basically have brick, a little bit of metal siding, a little bit of vertical red siding metal at the main entry, and then face brick, and then some solid panels. That's something that I usually like to know. Just talk.
Hi, my name's Melissa. I work for the construction arm of Home Leasing. We had a follow-up meeting with the Deputy Fire Chief Behringer about some of his concerns and just to explain some of our process. All of our buildings are non-smoking. I know he was worried about nuisance calls and false fire alarms. The unit's fire detection system is set to a supervisory capacity. So if it's triggered, it goes directly to maintenance or an online or an on-site leasing staff to address it. And then it gets auto reset. If it's something where smoke enters the corridors, then it would go directly to emergency services. We do 2 inspections per HCR per year for their requirements. And then we also have our sprinkler system inspected 4 times per year. And we also do regular maintenance of HVAC, including filter changes and things like that. So we will know if there's smoking or something else going inside the units. There's also a standard protocol for people found in violation, which could potentially result in a lease termination. I know this is something of concern for the chief being addressed. And then as it relates to being able to contact our staff, all emergency services are provided with a list of at least 5 people to get in touch with. We do have full-time on-site staff. And then if there's any reason that they would feel that their concerns aren't being addressed with local staff, they can always reach out to our leadership management team or reach out directly to them as well. Other areas of concern regarding construction would be elevator sizing. It's a senior property, so the elevator will be sized to accommodate a stretcher. We've made note of the sprinkler standpipe connections and during the construction process. The alleyway will be blocked off by fencing, so nobody will have access to the slope. And then the bidirectional amplifiers would have to be something addressed after the building is built because it's difficult to determine in advance of actual construction. So as far as environmental is concerned, the site is a good candidate for the brownfield cleanup program through the Department of Environmental Conservation. We've been working with HRP. They've conducted a phase 1 and a phase 2. The program provides incentives that would be required in order to make redevelopment of the site financially feasible. And we do have a schedule of what that would look like in terms of the application and submission process. Okay, and I think that's.
Can I just ask you one question, please? When you say you have full-time staff there, does that mean 24/7?
No, they're there Monday through Friday, and then they're on call. They would be locally sourced staff, though.
Any other questions?
Perhaps to the engineer. I noticed that there are pictures looking east to west. There are no pictures or designs showing where this building is from River Street up, going east.
In terms of the visual analysis.
Mhm.
So in the original presentation we had for you guys, we had at least the aerial view looking from west to east. But
So in our conversation with zoning board, their request was to see what this looks like really going back, so going towards the east. So what we did is we drove every single street. We have videos. What Ken showed earlier were just a couple of snippets. We're going to, on April 2nd, when we go to present, we have a whole slew of pictures that we'll be showing to them. And then even if they want to see it as video evidence of what it looks like, the reality is that, and I know your question's different, but from west to east, a vast majority of any areas where there are no homes and you can look through, it's wooded areas where during the summertime, it's all going to be tree covered. So there's not a lot of view shed that's going to be taken away, or there's other areas where it's just really the cloud area that's going to be, or parts of the clouds that's taken away from the view shed. But we have not taken pictures from east to west or River Street.
Okay. I did take a walk through the alleyway, and you're saying that the difference between north and south on the cliff, is it 25 feet?
East to west. It can be anywhere from 75 to 25 feet of a slope, or it's 25, yes.
so yeah, there's 25 feet of grade change from Fifth Ave down to the alley. But the slope in the rear is anywhere from, like 25 up to almost vertical in the center where there's the rock outcropping.
Okay, so if you're looking at this, and I drive River Street all the time, there's not that much traffic on Fifth Avenue where I'm concerned as to how that building is going to look from Fifth Avenue as you're driving by or driving in. If there's a 25-foot difference from the alley to the top of the rock on the cliff, you're asking for 2-story variance. So each floor, I believe, is 11 feet and 7 inches. So you take the 25 feet, add that on, you're looking at more than a 7-story building looking at it from River Street. So you've got this great big huge building on top of this hill that I believe not very attractive. You've got many buildings in front. There's only three, I think, on that block that are 3 stories, but nothing that's directly in front of your property from River Street. The
Yeah.
alley slopes up, so that's even more of a drop to River Street. There's a chain link fence that's holding dirt. You can't use the alley, and I'm sure that's why the fire department does not want to use it, because I think if a fire truck went through there, it would knock that fence down and all of that would be running down. And that's probably 3 feet, at least 3 feet, would you would say, Jim? So you're looking at another 3 feet. So you're looking at this building from River Street as more than a 7-foot high building.
Sure. So on River Street, the Color City Lofts as an example. So if you're at grade on River Street, Color City Lofts, I believe, is a 6-story building.
But it's not sitting on a hill. It was built years and years ago. I just don't think I'm going to like the appearance of the building from River Street at that height.
Yeah, we can address that by getting some additional pictures and renderings and share that with the ZBA.
Okay, and on the property, is there any place where any of these residents can go outside and sit on a bench or do any of that? Because I don't think your back property is not usable at all, correct?
Correct.
None of it. So there's no benches, no places for these seniors to go and sit. There's no parks in the area.
Well, there's a park that's 2 blocks north in Middleburg. But ultimately, again, we're dealing with a site that has very limited
Right.
space to do anything with it. So
Mhm.
what we're doing is we're trying to accommodate the best design for that location. Our FAR ratios are well below what they would be if it was just a flat site. Additionally, we do have in the building, we have multiple locations, common areas, including an outdoor patio space that helps create that same type of feel for outdoor bench seating and creating the the ambiance that you're talking about.
Okay.
Is
And
there a plan to do anything with that alley, to make it accessible for emergency vehicles or emergency, equipment?
that would have to
When
be
you
the
say
city.
alley, are you talking about the street that's below Vander Hayden Street?
Yeah, but the bottom of the mile levels.
Is that even, is that maintained
No,
No.
even? It's not.
No, we were told that they don't want anyone to be able to have access from back there. So I can't answer your question. That's really a question
Right.
for the city,
I'm
but
just thinking in terms of, emergency vehicles.
So I've been told by the fire department,
they
Jim,
will
that
not use it.
they do not use any alleys in the city. They do not feel that their equipment can be operated efficiently and safely in the alleys in general. They might in an extreme emergency, who knows? I don't know, but generally they operate on the regular city rights of way.
Right.
So there wouldn't be any access to the back of the building if
it'll be fenced
needed.
off.
Right, but I mean, for like people inside of the burning building.
Yeah, I mean,
back
per
of
our
the-
conversation.
Get out the front, you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, per our conversation with the fire chief, that was, and police, that was their request is their recommendations, they be able to handle everything from the front and that they want the entire back fenced off.
When you say fenced off, is it going to be fenced off at the drop or further in, further in from that cliff?
Do you have it on the site plan? No, we don't. All right, so.
So how many feet are you from the back of that property to the back of your building?
Probably about 50 feet.
Excuse me?
The building from the property line is about 50 feet.
50
say.
feet forward onto 50 feet closer to Fifth Avenue.
Here, you're saying?
Yes. It's 50 feet.
No. I think Fifth Avenue is the bottom here.
Fifth
So
Avenue
that's
is
the
at the
back
bottom,
of
right? So
the
it's,
drop.
right. It's 50 feet to the drop. The back of the building is 50 feet to the cliff. Okay,
That's a good question. What's the intention of behind the building? Is that
Nothing.
going to be replaced as some sort of green space or?
The rear slope, you mean?
Yeah, so the back of the building hits the slope. There's no topo here. I can't tell where it drops off.
So the existing building projects here. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the relationship of your building to where the slope starts to really drop off.
I mean, the slope starts here, like it.
Okay, so then that,
Whole thing is slope.
all right, so it's an illusion kind of, if you're looking at this flat, that the back of the building would go that far flat. It's, from the back of your building right now, it's sloping right down
This
to
is
your
the only
property
flat
line.
area behind the building, which is
Right.
Where the existing building is.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, okay. Where's-
So the entire rear slope right now is. The entire rear slope right now is all invasive species. It's very overgrown with vines and brush and all sorts of nasty vegetation. So we're planning on, ripping all of that out with appropriate means and then revegetating it with an aggressive ground cover and shrub mix.
So going back to that, is there been any plan at this point to control that slope in case of runoff or sloughing away of the shale that's up there? Is there a stability analysis yet? When you're doing excavation here, I could see if you're close to that slope, and if you have to drive pilings or whatever, I could see that shale peeling off.
So the sequence of events is there's bedrock. The low point of the bedrock is actually the high point on the site of the bedrock is like right in here at elevation 64.
Uh-huh.
This is actually unexcavated as far as our building is concerned. So we're actually doing caissons. So we're doing basically caissons with ground beams. So we'll have caissons every 29 feet on center coming across the back, and then there's gonna be a concrete grade beam tying everything together.
How far down is your bedrock?
Over here, it's very shallow.
Yeah.
We
Where
encountered
the building is, so the back of the building, how far down?
It
is-
varies, like we only have 5 borings because we don't have borings where the existing building is, because we can't take them through a building just yet because we don't own it. But this is all flat, so the building is not like right on the edge of the slope, this is like 36 feet back from the top of the slope anyway. So anyway,
36
bedrock
feet.
here, caissons, traditional strip footings, direct onto bedrock, bedrock probably one of the best things to put your building on, World Trade Center, not the World Trade Center, Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, all on bedrock. So our geotech engineer will be, as part of our building permit application, we're submitting the geotech report that
Thank you.
talks about all the stabilization.
Thanks.
Other questions?
How many cubic yards do you think you gotta take out of there?
It's going to be a vast majority of the soil that sits above the bedrock. The exact cubic yards number, I don't have. off the top of my head.
No guesstimation,
I don't know the number off the top of my head.
because I mean, the soil itself is pretty,
Sorry.
the soil itself is pretty shallow.
Correct. Yeah.
So
I mean, it's in some places it'll be a foot or two. But as Ken said, it really varies because the bedrock is at different heights.
So where are you at with DEC? Is the phase 2 been submitted to them for?
So we finished the phase 2, the process that we would typically go, just because if you think about the risks associated with projects like this, is that we are looking to get site plan approval, and at that point in time, submit to DEC. So just the application alone for the BCP, the Brownfield Cleanup Program, it can be a $50,000 application in addition to all your remedial action work plan, paperwork, and getting the engineer to do all the analysis and reports required. So it can run up to become a $100,000 cost. So typically what you're going to do, or what developers will always do, is get the site plan approval in place and then submit for the DEC application. We are teeing up an initial call with them just to talk through the process, but it's something that we've done before. We're familiar with the process, and it really just comes down to costs.
What type of contamination did your phase two come up with?
So it was a foundry at one point in time in
Right.
the past history. So there are quite a bit of metals in there. There's other PFAS, PVOCs that were found. So it's dirty.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, HRPR, environmental engineer, specializes in brownfield remediation, and they've done a lot of brownfield cleanup programs over the course of their careers on behalf of developers. So, when they give a recommendation of saying that this is a very good candidate for a project, because typically it's when you go into something like this, it's a, 50, 60% chance, but they're saying there's a very high likelihood.
So you guys have taken title to the site, or do you have an
No,
option agreement?
an
You
option.
haven't closed on the site?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
There is on Fifth Avenue, there is a telephone pole. Is that going to be removed? Moved to a different spot? It's the telephone pole is going to stay there? No, there's one, yeah, way north that's in front of your property or way south.
I can't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're remaining. We're not impacted them.
Okay, so that's either going to be a part of your sidewalk or,
There's enough clearance for there still to be at least a 4-foot sidewalk, but it's, I believe, wider than that.
okay.
Around.
Any other questions?
No, but I would like to make a motion. Can I? I would like to make a motion that the ZBA not allow them to have 2 more stories added to this building.
So the ZBA has not, you want to recommend to the ZBA at some point that. all right, that,
I would like to recommend it before they go before the ZBA that they not approve the 2.
So the planning board is entitled to make recommendations to the ZBA with respect to, the variances. Oftentimes there's a recommendation to approve variances. I see no reason you couldn't make a motion to disapprove a variance also.
Well, that's what I would like to do.
And do they need a variance for this height?
Yes.
They do.
They need a 2-story variance. Anybody-
Second on the motion?
No.
No second.
Okay.
Well,
The motion can't be considered without a second.
right. Maybe
It's just my opinion.
I will second the motion. Discussion.
So I think obviously the number of units here, if we remove the top 2 floors, is going to cause financial,
Problems.
yeah, they're not going, it probably isn't feasible.
Right.
And what we have existing up there is mess, a real bad problem. There's a Red X building that's going to come down one way or the other, probably hot. And so, I don't think, I think I'd like to keep it going and see where the ZBA ends up on what they're doing. And I'd like to see some more studies on what's going to happen with the DEC and the slope studies. But I think it's premature to say that we should force this to be an infeasible project.
Other discussion?
I agree with Jim.
Yeah.
The fewer goes that go forward, but I don't see, for the amount of work and the effort and the money that it's gonna cost to get this cleaned up, what other projects are gonna be feasible? You know what I mean? To put you, to get your money back one way or another, Nobody's definitely no one's gonna put a single family home there. That's for sure.
Nor a restaurant.
No, right. So, like to see where you guys are going. Yeah.
Jeff?
I agree. Let's see this play out a little bit more. Yeah, I know the area and I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of appearance of the building. But I also understand the other side to this. There's not going to be much else you can do there. So,
All right. Any other discussion? All right, well, we'll take a vote. So I'll call the roll. Mr. Scully,
Nay.
Ms. Dickinson,
Yay.
Mr. Schufelt,
Nay.
Mr. York,
nay.
Mr. Keough, yes. Motion fails. 3-2.
I tried.
Okay, so what are you looking for tonight?
We were hoping for a seeker determination so that the ZBA can move forward with a vote.
There's some legal impediments to doing a seeker tonight. One is that you have previously declared yourself lead agency. That means that you are leading a coordinated review. Unfortunately, I think due to a slip up of some sort, the other involved agencies were not properly notified. So we do have to send out 30-day notices to other agencies, especially the DEC, I think, to get their feedback on whether or not they consent to your being lead agency. And for example, in another project that you're considering, 74 New Turnpike, they just sent us it's either 6 or 7 pages of concerns, not also consenting to the planning to your lead agency status, but that's another project. And that brings up the second issue here is that the case law is certain that you're not entitled to just rely upon the fact that DEC would conduct a brownfield assessment and perhaps cleanup in conducting your own seeker evaluation. Seeker and DEC brownfield are separate processes. I mean, we can depend on it that they're going to want it clean, but I think you would have to know in order to take the hard look at the environmental contamination that could result from this project, you would need to at least know what DEC would be proposing. And I think they might give you that in a letter, or how they would be conducting it or something like that. Otherwise, you would just be foregoing your responsibility to conduct a hard look seeker review. So I don't think it's ripe for a seeker determination. That's my legal advice.
In other words, we need more stuff.
Yes, just like you said before.
So
There are other studies too, I think, that you could probably benefit from.
Right.
do you concur with that assessment?
I mean, in speaking with Randy Coburn, he had indicated to us that this was an unlisted action, which would not be a coordinated review. Is that not your interpretation?
An unlisted action can be a coordinated review. If one of the agencies declares itself lead agency, which this agency has done. And I think it's particularly appropriate in this case, because in fact, there needs to be some communication with, especially with DEC regarding the contamination at this site and how it can be mitigated.
Is your expectation that DEC is going to respond to this in the next 30 days?
How long did it take them to respond to 74? Not long. They respond fairly quickly.
And just out of curiosity, what you're going to send them the long form and ask for their feedback on it?
What have we sent them in the past?
That brought it to the conversation.
Oh, okay. We may in fact send them the long form. We definitely send them a letter asking for their consent, and they did you? Go ahead.
Noticing any agency will just send them the entire package of what you've like provided
Mhm.
so that they would weigh in and normally they're only looking at one portion of it. So, but they would need to, I would need, first, I guess, a list of your other agencies you're working with for funding or involvement. And then,
Isn't that all included on the long form?
okay. So we'll pick up, we'll pick up where we left off and we'll start that conversation with DEC. And coordinate it. And coordinate it.
I mean, just in my experience, typically when you put in the coordinated agencies on the long form, where I've never been in a situation where you're waiting on a response from those coordinated agencies to opine on what's in the form. Is that ultimately what you're suggesting?
I think what you're saying, Rick, is that since the planning board's lead agency, DEC has to be notified of that and then respond to that. That's what we're talking about here, right?
So they could just say, fine, we have no objection, you be lead agency. But we're going to invite them to comment more in more elaborate fashion. So as they have done with another project, okay? So they've given us a 6-page letter expressing various areas of environmental concern that in this other project that involve wetlands and possible historic sites and things like that. Now, I don't know that your project has any of that, but I know that your project has a significant concern with environmental contamination.
Right. Okay, I'm not pushing back on, I'm just questioning because I know that there's other projects within the city of Troy that have also submitted similar types of applications. And it specifies in there that DEC is a coordinated agency, and I've never heard of them then being contacted to be part of that.
I know of one, and I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you consent to extending the review period till we get responses?
Choice, right?
Are there 30 days before the next meeting? Probably not, right? So it's going to push us out 2 months.
Yes, there is.
Right.
Yeah. The next meeting's on the 22nd.
And if you want to submit, I don't know if you have other studies that you haven't submitted for the seeker package yet, but like slope analysis and things like that. Anything you can get.
I guess the answer is we don't really have an option other than to extend.
So you do consent.
Correct.
So any action?
So you can't take any action. You haven't done seeker yet.
So
I think we'll just adjourn it for the proper notifications and for any further studies that the applicant wants to submit with respect to your seeker analysis. And I think that the notification to DEC will request any elaboration they want to give with respect to the, applicant's eligibility for remediation and brownfield, stuff like that.
Understand?
I understand that, but they're determining whether we're brownfield, whether we're applicable for the brownfield cleanup program. How does that relate to getting a seeker approval?
So my understanding was that you were planning on dealing with all the potential and significant adverse environmental effects from the contamination through a brownfield remediation program.
That's correct.
So are you asking me that if you don't get a brownfield remediation program, how will that affect the seeker process? Then you'll have to come forward with a plan of remediation to this board.
Right.
Of your own.
Right.
So that's one way it could affect.
Understood.
I mean, if these are intertwined in your mind, I mean, I'm just saying that the case law is pretty clear that the DEC process and the secret process are separate. This agency has independent responsibilities to ensure that there will be no significant adverse environmental effects, or that there will be a full EIS and they'll be dealt with through a scoping plan. But if they are not, and if I understand I understand that DEC will be part of your proposal in the sense that to accomplish the remediation through a brownfield cleanup. But we certainly need to know whether or not that's going to happen and what it will encompass and whether or not the project fits within it without adversely, you have to build the project in a certain way that the brownfield itself will not be disturbed, I guess, right? And that's why you're not doing any foundation work or anything like that. You're going to build those, what you call it, caissons or something like that to support the structure.
Right, but so with the brownfield cleanup program process, they don't tell you upfront that you're automatically approved, right? We have to pay upwards of $50,000 as just an application fee and then significant environmental engineering costs in order for them to make that determination and then approve you. So I don't know how they're going to be able to say you guys are a brownfield, they being DEC are going to say that you guys are brownfield eligible, and then the planning board can then make the recommendation.
I admit I'm not fully aware of all the details of the process and probably not as aware as you are, but it would seem to me that can they discuss eligibility for the brownfield program? Can they discuss in general what the brownfield program would entail? Because how do we know? How does the board know that it will be sufficient?
Sorry, what do you mean?
How does the board know that this project and whatever brownfield cleanup that DEC orders will work together, I guess, and will be sufficient so that there will be no adverse environmental impacts that could not be mitigated?
Well, like I said to Jim earlier, is that it's sort of a two-step process, right? So typically we're looking to get a site plan approval prior to spending the money in order to get into the brownfield cleanup program. So if we have the ability to get an automatic approval up front before this, that's a different story, but that's just not how the process works. And they want to see certain steps along the way, as well as a material application fee in order for them to make a determination.
So the difficulty seems to be that, you want a site, we can't give a site plan approval until we do a seeker. And if we do a seeker neg deck, we would have to depend on excuse me, what I wanted to say here. I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
So I think we're getting back
Yeah.
to what we're really doing here is, since we're lead agency, we're sending a letter to DEC and saying, hey, we're lead agency unless you trump us somehow.
Yeah.
And then they come back and say, okay, and then we can go forward here.
Sure, that I understand,
Okay.
but I don't know if
All
they're
right,
going to
that's
give
what-
you clarity on the brownfield cleanup program, right? Like
So
they may say.
I
we've
don't
reviewed
think
it.
we're asking for anything on the brownfield. That's your financial.
No,
thing.
that's
No.
what Rick was saying.
But we need to know what it is.
We need
and
to
how
know what it
works
is
and how it
so-
works.
And,
Okay.
and, DEC is probably going to provide us and you
Sure.
with what they would require for a clean, who
Right.
knows? I mean, I've been in situations where you're like, oh my God,
Right.
and this is a difficult one. So, I mean, since we declared ourselves lead agency.
Sure.
This is kind of, we have to notify them. They come back and say, okay, you can be lead agency and here's where we're at.
Understood. I mean, just so you're aware, I think there's been a lot of projects that have historical precedent in Troy where that isn't typically the process. Understood if that's a process you guys want to run now, but you have applications in front of you actively where it's a project that's eligible for BCP, and it's gone through the exact same process where a planning board approved and gave a neg deck, planning board approved seeker and gave a neg deck. Just letting you guys know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you guys want to table the motion to a certain date, or do you want to table the motion for them to come back at a certain date? Or would you prefer to, you guys mutually agreed to keep the review open?
Yeah, I think that's where
Review
we're at,
open.
right? We're keeping it open.
Right.
So it's, you know, depending on what they get would be the schedule for you as to the next meeting.
So,
So do we have
After
to,
your notice, your notices go out. It's a mandatory 30-day wait.
unless it comes back sooner.
Right.
So they could be on the next meeting agenda.
Yeah, I mean, 30 days is before the next meeting.
Right.
so any
we
action
have to-
required or just it's extended until further action?
Just table it for now.
So make a motion to table it.
Yeah. Just for-
Okay, I make a
Motion to
motion. I make a
Ellen,
motion to table.
second.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion carries. Next item is 2024-0053, 74 New Turnpike. Applicant is present. Representative is present.
Good evening. Andy Brick from the Brick Law Firm. With me is Karen Modlezi-Yanowski from Bowler Engineering and Anthony Casal from Gulfstream, the project applicant. This is 74 New Turnpike. It's the proposed tiny home project at the former Leonard Hospital. We were before you previously. I wanted to briefly let you know that there have been some revisions to the plan since we saw you last, based upon one, the comments and the feedback we received from this board, but also the fact that as you may be aware, the New York State wetlands regulations have changed. And one of the things that we did in anticipation of those regulations possibly affecting this project is we redesigned to move all of our tiny homes out of the 100-foot buffer from the wetland, which is the stream around the back of the property. So those are the two bases for the redesign. The redesign we submitted to you included a significant increase in parking based upon some feedback from you folks that you thought there may be more parking. We've received some informal feedback that we maybe went a little bit overboard. And so we actually are designing back as per the applicant and removing some of the over parking that we had provided with the plan that you're currently seeing. I'm going to have Karen walk you through the revisions to the plan since you've last seen it. But I did want to touch upon very briefly, based upon the conversation you just had, we are the applicant that received the consent to lead agency letter from the DEC. And that process was followed. And someone had mentioned that not only does it consent to you being secret lead agency, but it also references all these other items that DEC thinks that you're going to want to be taking a look at as lead agency. I briefly wanted to go through them because we've addressed all of the ones that DEC is recommending we look at. So we were very encouraged when we got this today. The first thing that they mentioned is the freshwater wetlands program, and they informed us all that the regs have changed. We're a little bit ahead of that. We knew they had changed, so we've already redesigned to address the fact that the stream is in the back and we're not going to be impacting the buffer or the stream whatsoever. In addition, for the freshwater wetlands program and the waters program, the protection of waters program, Russ Reeves, the city engineer, was kind enough to forward to us a floodplain map from the property. And there is a portion of the floodplain on the upper left side, but we've already addressed that because our design plan incorporates bringing in fill. Our plan is to bring the entire parcel up at least 3 feet. So we will be moving out of the floodplain. So we've already, planned for that possibility. Water quality certification, again, we've moved everything out of the wetland and the buffer, so we're not going to need a wetland quality certification from DEC. Speedy's general permit, they said, keep in mind, you're more than an acre, you're going to need to provide to the city a SWIP, because you're the MS4 representative, and we are in the process of drafting our SWIP. And we were already ahead of that because we knew we had to do that. So Bowler's actively working on that. They mentioned the water withdrawal program and the fact that we will be utilizing potable drinking water from the City of Troy system, but we don't seek an extension because we're a redevelopment of an existing site. So we're already within the water withdrawal program. We're fine there. Cultural resources, they point out that we should be reaching out to SHPO, and the good news is the Bowler folks were already ahead of us, and they've already applied to SHPO through the CRIS system to determine whether or not SHPO believes there's anything of archaeological value on the property or in the vicinity. We don't believe there is. We don't believe the answer from SHPO when they come back will say that a phase one is warranted because of the simple fact that this is a redevelopment. I mean, there was a hospital there for years. The entire parcel has been disturbed. So we don't expect SHPO to require any type of archaeological investigation. However, if they do, we will comply with whatever they require. And the last they mention is inactive hazardous waste disposal sites. And this kind of goes back to what the folks you were just talking to about a brownfield program. We have submitted a phase one environmental that was done on behalf of the city because it's city-owned property that we're acquiring. And our phase one does not recommend conducting a phase two. Normally, what a phase one will, if they identify something of concern, they will either recommend or require that a phase two, a deeper level of analysis is required. Our phase one does not require or recommend or even recommend that phase two can be conducted. So we think we're square there. And I would also point out that if you look at DEC's letter on page 4, they specifically state that related to inactive hazardous waste, the DEC should be notified immediately of potential spills or contamination at any point during the planning or construction of the project. So DEC, in effect, is saying, hey, we don't identify you on our system, but if you dig something up while you're digging, contact us right away. So they've already recognized that we don't have to apply to any type of program or do any type of further investigation, with the understanding that if we hit something when we're digging, we got to stop everything, contact the city, contact DEC, and we have no problem with that whatsoever. That's what we would do. It's a good best management practice anyway. So we are a little bit ahead of what DEC had suggested that we take a look at. And I just wanted to report that to you and take 5 minutes to mention that because in light of the last conversation that you had. So we've gotten a letter, and to go back to the beginning, the purpose of the letter is they consent to you being lead agency. They are the only other involved agency, so we're not waiting on any other agency's consent. So that puts you in a position where you can consider granting us a negative declaration under secret this evening, which is what we would be requesting. But before we get to that, I'll let Karen go over the revisions, and then I'll come back and discuss with you that.
Just before you move on, Andy,
Sure.
what's the date of your phase one?
The phase one was conducted for the city. Do you have the date of it? The city has a copy of it because it was done for the city. I don't know the specific date.
7 or 8 years old, I think, though, isn't it?
I don't know the exact date. It may be.
Pre-demolition?
Yes.
Thank you. Karen Majanowski from Bowler Engineering for the record. And since we were last here, we've done a lot of exciting things. As Andy mentioned, I'll go over what we've done from a site plan standpoint and design since we were last here. So we initially started with a concept site plan to get everybody's thoughts on the PDD and the proposal for the use and layout of the project. So substantially that hasn't changed. However, we did have an actual site survey done, and this is now an engineered site plan based on that survey. So this is completely factual and engineered now that we have that. So you will notice some differences to the geometry between the survey and the actual mapping of the stream and wetland that we have, as Andy mentioned, and pulling away from that as much as possible. So where we used to hug homes up in that top kind of pointy corner, the eastern part of the site, we've pulled away from that because of that wetland. And that's why you see additional green space in that area and in the area to the north, which we're reserving for stormwater management now. So we'll have stormwater up in that northern green space as well as a recreation area. So things have shifted around a bit, but everything is still there. We're still at 86 homes proposed, single family, ranging in size as noted on our plan with 4 different sizes. And we have increased the parking based on your feedback last time that there wasn't enough, and reconfigured that so that they're no longer driveways with kind of awkward spaces on the roadways for parking. It's now parking that could be used by anybody as needed for any home. And there's about 200 spaces, so about 2.5 spaces per home. If you say we want 2 spaces per home, then we can do that. Reduce parking, increase green space, no issue there. Along with that, there are 12 ADA spaces proposed. We also took our plans and design further. So we did submit a landscaping design showing the green space areas with trees and shrubs. And we also submitted our lighting design with our site lighting for the site as requested. We also studied, assembled and submitted the transportation demand management plan, which overall is a positive for this site, going from a 140 bed hospital down to 86 senior living homes, which shows about an 88% reduction in the weekday total of trips, an 80 to 96% reduction in AM hours, and a 66 to 89% reduction in PM hours for vehicle trips as compared to the previous development. As mentioned, we also submitted to SHPO and to DEC to be ahead of that. We also submitted a drainage report, which indicates we're decreasing impervious area, increasing green space from the previous development with this redevelopment. And we've discussed water and sewer with Russ and the city and understand there's no capacity concerns there. Again, from the previous hospital to this is going to be efficient. And we also designed this layout based on feedback from the fire department. Following the last meeting, they did confirm the size of their ladder truck that they would use. So we did navigate that through the site when we were working on these design plans. And that's something that we'll make sure that they're comfortable with as well, that we're working on. As a reminder, these will be private roads. So we've designed them to, as the city's request, to be 26 feet wide to address the fire department as well. So that is reflected in these plans, and we'll have appropriate fire hydrants throughout along our water main that will serve the property. So we've done a lot of exciting things, come a long way with the design and the proposed plans and development here. There'll be some final touches with technical things and the SWIP as we get past the seeker point. But for now, we feel we've brought it to a point that we're excited to share here and go forward with.
So there's 86 buildings.
Correct.
And how many people, what's the total occupancy potential on the whole property? How many people could live there?
So likely you're going to see 1 or 2 people, seniors living in these buildings,
Okay.
in these homes.
So that would mean 120, 130, 140?
I mean, say at
people?
max 170 or
Right,
so if
and
you had
have
2.
200 and some odd parking space?
Correct.
211, was it?
We have about 201 right now.
201. So that's more than enough, right?
We feel that is adequate. Yes.
Now, the 55 and over, do you have any feeling about how many people would even not have cars?
There don't have exact numbers, but there might be some that don't. They can rely on other transportation in this location.
So it seems like a lot of parking. Yeah, that's my comment.
It's up for discussion.
What's the distance between, in the middle row of buildings here, what's the distance between the 2?
About 11 feet would be the minimum.
So you're building Ds, do they still have garages?
No.
There's no garages in any of these?
No
buildings?
garages.
Any other questions? No? Andy, I have a couple of questions. Did you, the staff, did you see the staff recommendations?
Yes, I did. And going through them briefly, we agree to all of them. A lot of them we're already working on. A lot of them we can do. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think a phase 2 environmental assessment is warranted because it wasn't recommended or required by the phase 1. And the archaeology survey, we've already submitted to SHPO. If SHPO requires it, we'll do it, but we don't expect it only because it's a redevelopment site. Everything else is something we can definitely do and provide. I should point out that we're not here seeking final approval tonight. In light of some of those matters in the staff recommendations, such as the utility plan, I think that's something that you're going to want to see and you're going to want staff to review and Russ Reeves to review prior to granting site plan approval. So we're not here seeking final site plan tonight. What we're asking for is for you to consider issuing a negative declaration under seeker now that you have had DEC weigh in. And the reason for that is we still need PDD approval from the city council, and they are constrained, much like the ZBA is constrained in the prior action from taking any action until the lead agency acts on seeker. The city council is currently on hold awaiting a secret determination from you. So what we're requesting is you consider granting us a negative declaration under seeker with the understanding that we will be back before you for final site plan. We're continuing to work with the city departments, engineering, planning, on the staff recommendation issues. And also, I'm guessing based upon the last recommendation that we have to submit an escrow account, there's going to be a third-party engineer review, which is another level of protection that we're happy to have that conversation with them and get the third-party engineer to sign off on all of our plans. We don't think that level of detailed engineering needs to be in front of you to make a secret determination. We think under the secret guidelines as lead agency, you have an obligation to take a hard look, as Rick had said, and identify whether or not there's a potential for any significant adverse environmental impacts. And the words they use are important: significant adverse impacts. We think we've provided a level of data and analysis to you at this juncture that you are able to reasonably determine that there is no potential for a significant adverse impact. There still is a potential for impacts that we're going to address through the site plan review process, but that potential for impacts isn't adverse and can be addressed and mitigated as we go through the site plan review process with you, with the city departments, and with the third-party review. So we do think you're in a position where you consider it tonight, because I don't think anybody has identified a significant adverse impact that's a potential from this project. And one of the reasons for that is because it's a redevelopment. It's not something new on a pristine parcel.
Well, you said you agree with the staff recommendations, but but you don't agree with the phase 2 environmental assessment, right?
Correct. I don't think it's required. In my experience, a phase 1 either recommends or requires a phase 2. And if you have a phase 1 that doesn't make that recommendation or articulate that requirement, I think that puts you in a position where you consider that phase 2 is not warranted. Now, that being said, I think DEC also contemplates that process as well. When in their letter I mentioned, they said, hey, when you're building, if you find anything, stop what you're doing and contacting us. So I think they also contemplate that not a phase 2 isn't always necessary, but at some point, if something comes up, you have to address it immediately. And I think that's what they were foreshadowing in their letter as well.
Understand. Do you object to a new phase 1?
I don't think it's required. I don't, if you're going to require it, I'm not going to object, Mr. Chair. However, I don't think that it's necessary. Nothing has happened on the parcel other than the demolition since the original phase 1. The parcel has been maintained under the security and control of the city since that time. There's been no indication to us or city staff, to my knowledge, that there's been any illegal dumping or any contamination or anything that's happened to that property since the building came down.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry.
I just don't think it's necessary.
I don't know if we know that there's been nothing illegal on there, but even another concern would be we don't, the phase one was pre-demolition and we don't really know. I don't know if the city has confidence that there was nothing untoward done in the process of the demolition. So there's been no environmental study since the demolition, and I don't know what happened during the demolition.
And I can't speak to the city's knowledge of, since they've post-demolition, their control of the site and what they know and don't know. That I can't speak to that. I think you'd have to ask the engineer, but.
Or, contemporaneous with the demolition is
Right.
another concern because that's not always done properly.
Understood, but I don't have any indication that it
I
wasn't
understand.
done properly here.
All right. Okay. Questions, further questions, comments?
TEC is saying that it's in the vicinity of an inactive petroleum bulk storage facility. How far away and where is that? Do you know where it is?
Not sure. Don't know the specific answer
It's
to
not
that.
on your property, obviously, but.
Correct.
Well,
But
but it could be referring to on-site tanks that used to be fairly common in ground. I don't know that they are.
No, it's specific,
in the
it specifically
vicinity.
says in the vicinity of, which I think the concern there is underground plumes. So if you're in the vicinity of one, theoretically, it could be in the ground underneath you. And I think that's why they follow up that sentence with the statement that when you're digging, if you find something, contact us immediately.
Yeah.
I think those two go together.
Which then would call for testing and drilling and all that kind of stuff too. So that'd be a phase two at that point. But I'm just curious as to where what they're talking about, the petroleum bulk storage facility. Is there a gas station nearby or an old gas station?
I don't know.
No?
It theoretically could be the school. I don't know.
And these are going to be on slab, right? No basements.
Correct. Stick built on slab.
Yeah, and first raised 3 feet on compacted soil and then a slab.
Correct. And then Alaskan slabs, which is just a slab that kind of moves around, which is a little frightening, but they work. So,
No wells, it's all city water and sewer.
correct. Yes. And I believe the will survey, the capacity is there for water and sewer. There is existing utilities on site. We just have to work with engineering to get them. And Russ Reeves did graciously provide us with a copy of the utilities plan for that whole neighborhood. So we know where everything is on site.
Tony?
I just have, I don't know, suggestions, whatever. Your buildings, I think you said between your A's to your D's is gonna be $1,500 to $2,000 for rentals? Was that mentioned? at the Beginning of our
Yes.
$1,500 to $2,000.
correct.
Okay, so what would happen? I think you have too many buildings on this property. I think you have too many buildings. I think you have too many B buildings. What would happen if you took away your A and B buildings and only built C and D buildings, kept your D buildings with a garage and put your D buildings in that island and around where every other one was an A or a B, doing just Cs and Ds?
And I
Is
don't,
that feasible?
I don't know that the applicants looked at that specific scenario, but what I can tell you is that they have done that same type of analysis where they have looked at every which way on which works best and how many can we use of each to get us to a point where it is still a profitable project. And this is what they came up with. So, but I don't know if they specifically just said would just C and Ds work, because the C and Ds are the slightly larger, so we would likely lose units as a result of the larger footprint. And the 86 is right about the marginal where we need that number to make the project work. So
But if you got rid of your As and Bs, your rent would be going up and that wouldn't kind of,
the rent goes up for a smaller number of units, but the construction costs actually also go up because they're larger. So I don't know. I mean, we could take a look at it, but I don't know that it works. If the planning board consider down the road, we're not asking for an approval tonight, but consider down the road an approval of, you're allowed up to 86 units, but we want to see more Cs and Ds, we can obviously go back and take a look at it and try and make it work.
Well, my only, I think 11 feet in the middle between the front and between the backs of the houses and the sides of the houses. I know senior citizens want to downsize, but I think with this downsizing, you're asking for a lot. You're going to have front porches on all of them or only some of them, right?
Some of them, correct.
So with 11 feet in the middle between those B houses, you have, is it still allowed? I know apartments you cannot have allowed, you can't have gas cookers. In a space this small and this dense, would they still be able to have a grill?
I would suspect they probably wouldn't be able to have a grill between the buildings, but they'll probably be allowed to grill in the open space areas. And
So you're gonna carry everything over to your recreation area?
that's a legitimate question. I agree. Whether or not maybe we put some grills on the recreation area, may be a happy medium there. And you had, I think you intimated that 11 feet is pretty short between the units.
You got 5.5 feet on each for your property.
We look at it completely differently. We look at it as if this was a gigantic cement rectangular block apartment building, then the space between the units would be the wall between the units. So by deconstructing it, 11 feet of grass is better than the one cement wall, one cinder block width. That's the way we're looking at it.
I'm looking at it in a different perspective. I'm looking at it if they don't want to be in an apartment and they want to be in a small house. I think they want more area to be able to do things.
Understood. No, I appreciate that.
I think, well, if I may chime in, while we're on the subject, the fire department does have concern about that distance, that 11-foot distance.
Okay.
So just.
Sounds like it's getting larger then.
And I think if you go back and look, you're saying that this is feasible as far as doing financially what you need to do. But if you can get rid of your A's and B's and put C's and D's, I think you should look at that to see if that's feasible financially to do it.
We will do it. Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? Staff, is the city staff satisfied that the staff recommendations have been satisfied by Andy's presentation, or are there still open issues there?
I'll defer to Rick.
Well, the one recommendation that has not been satisfied is the recommendation for a phase 2. I understand that as Andy has articulated, the original phase 1 did not call for a phase 2. However, the building that is old. It's nearly 10 years old, I think, as Peter pointed out. And that was when the building was still standing. It would seem to me, at least, since you're asking all these people to live on this property, that you might want some further, it's up to you. Ultimately, whether you want further assurance that it is not contaminated. I don't know how hard it would be to do a phase 2, or at a minimum update the phase 1 so that, so the engineers could look at it and decide whether or not, the demolition itself, what potential it had for contamination. I don't know.
And we would be willing, if it's a sense to the board that they want to see some additional environmental analysis to bulk up the original phase 1, we'd be willing to do that as part of the final site plan review process. I would argue that it's not necessarily required for you to make your environmental determination in your neg deck tonight. knowing that it's coming, because if we do identify something, you still have the control to address it during the site plan review process and the third-party engineering. So unless you think that there's a reasonable possibility of a significant adverse environmental impact that is, revealed by the phase two, I think you still could make the neg deck and require us to do a phase two. And we'd be willing to do some type of, I don't know if it'd be a phase two or subsequent environmental analysis where our expert convinces your experts that a phase two isn't required, but we'd be willing to do that additional work.
Okay, thank you.
What are we doing?
Public comment, please. Come to the microphone, please, and identify yourself.
Sorry, I cannot. I have an opinion about the design. And my name is Jenny Casal. I am an architect. And I think the idea of the senior citizen complex is wonderful. And I agree with Mrs. About the size of the units. But in another hand, to say, I suggest if there is two semi-attached houses, that will be increase the green area between units, which is the fire problem. And that will be the best, I think, two semi-attached houses and 4 parking spaces in the front. That will be increase the small green spaces. Usually people become like a storage size when it's too small. Okay, that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes.
Hello, everyone. Stephen Maples, Second Street. I was just going to make a quick comment in good faith to both the board and the applicant that on the subject of pedestrian circulation, there's been, I think there's adequate accommodation for pedestrian circulation from one's car to the unit, but I would suggest that the pedestrian circulation from unit to unit and from the units to the recreation area could use some work. There's not a whole lot of crossings. There's no painted crossings. There's not a ton of possibly even some raised crossings, things of that nature to move around within the complex. I think would be warranted, and also a more substantial connection to the sidewalk system of the city itself. And I think that would just be a suggestion that I would offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, thank you. One more.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and
Mr. Engineer.
Yes, sir. My name is Russ Reeves. I was the city engineer here in Troy and the commissioner of the Department of Public Utilities. I had come back to the city on a part-time basis to assist with, shall I say, engineering issues and issues with the water plant and so forth. I've been asked to look at life safety issues and engineering issues by the administration on this project to ensure that it's done properly and safely from an engineering standpoint.
Russ, could you lift the mic up a little bit there, please?
Yes, I
Yeah,
can. Is that sufficient? I'm just going to hold it like this. I think this connection's a little broken. During the review process, I have asked that drainage issues be addressed. We find that a portion of the site lies within the 100-year floodplain. In speaking with the project engineer, I indicated that fill would need to be brought in to lift foundations, which is a Alaskan slab, as Mr. Brick pointed out of the 100-year floodplain, pavement, roadway sections can be in the 100-year floodplain. But we want to mitigate that. We want to bring in enough fill to get sufficient topographic relief to bring the site out of the 100-year. And I indicated that to the applicant's professionals. On this site, what was found from a hazardous material standpoint was fuel oil, hydraulic fluid, most likely associated with the elevator system for the hospital. Fuel oil was associated most likely with the boiler system. When I read DEC's, and I received it today, DEC's correspondence, and they referred to a bulk storage. Bulk storage today, most likely there was some kind of above ground storage tank at one time used to store oil for the hospital. DEC required you to have a hospital, including the Department of Public Utilities, the water plant. We have a bulk storage permit to store a number of things there. In our case, it's chemicals. In the hospital's case, it would be fuel oil that subsequently had been removed. The environmental assessment report, shall I say, what Clark Harbor did, that environmental evaluation, they found no evidence of underground storage tanks. They found no evidence above ground storage tanks. What they did find was some 55-gallon drums that included, as I mentioned, some fuel oil, some hydraulic fluid associated, most likely associated with the elevator. There was a degreasing fluid that was used for equipment when they were oiling it and cleaning it. Carbon tetrachloride, 20 gallons of that. In all likelihood, that was removed, but I don't want to take that for granted. We're, as part of our internal review, and I should point out, there is a third-party engineering review as a redundancy. It all boils down to life safety. That's our job. In many cases, in all cases, everyone's sitting here, and city staff is the first line of defense, first and last line of defense in public safety. So we take that very seriously. So we're going to work collaboratively with the applicant and work out where we do a phase 2 evaluation. It's a precautionary measure. It's a conservative approach to ensure that we create a healthful environment for the folks living here. In all likelihood, what we're going to require as part of this project is 2-layer, and this is a very common practice in applications like this. It's going to be a reinforced concrete Alaskan slab on grade with haunched perimeter sections. We're going to request that 2 layers of 6 mil polyethylene plastic as a, shall I use the word, not only vapor barrier, but it's a chemical barrier to anything that's not caught or picked up during the proposed phase 2 investigation. That's a precautionary measure to make sure that there's no errant volatile organics. All volatile organics have a vapor pressure to it. That's when you smell gasoline. That's because of its vapor pressure. Well, that's what permeates through a concrete slab, because a concrete slab is porous. So one of the things we're going to request as part of the engineering design is 2 layers of 6 mil polyethylene plastic. We're going to request that at the time this project is advanced, that a phase 2 in fact be done. And we're going to work that out with the applicant. It's our concern is for public safety. It's a wise practice to do. We just want to make sure that there's no, if we do some random testing, that we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. Again, it's about ensuring public safety. Our own experience, we've been involved, and I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of good projects here in the city over the years, and we've had a lot of contaminated sites. A lot of the contaminated sites we remove the contaminated material, the volatile organics, oil, whatever the volatile organics are. It's placed on a plastic a material membrane, allowed to evaporate into the atmosphere, and that soil is then removed as solid waste. Those that can't be removed as solid waste get put in 55-gallon drums and go through a combustion process at Norlight for proper permitted disposal. Okay, so there's a mechanism to do all that. In working with the applicant, the applicant's engineer has provided an engineering report touching on the various areas that we worry about. Stormwater, sanitary, water. This was a hospital, 140 beds plus staff. This is now proposed 86 beds, basically. So it's less of an impact. That site, the former Leonard Hospital site, every square inch of that was either pavement or building. It was a combination of both. So there was no real green space. Now there will be green space. It's a requirement. We're having to manage stormwater. So we've had a lot of discussions internally about if a negative declaration can be issued based on the material that's been provided thus far, and recognizing that as we progress through the approval process and go towards an advanced engineering set of documents, phase 2 testing will take place as we go towards final approval. It's the proper thing to do. And we're going to resolve that very, very amicably with the applicant, with the project sponsor. So I want to defer to the city attorney on the issue of, shall I say, the negative declaration. From a scientific standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, I am comfortable with the progress of what we received thus far. Based on my experience here in the city and my experience in general, I think the materials we have thus far and my knowledge of the site, each of these engineering issues are all addressable, including the presence of what I see as potential waste that could be there. Fuel oil, hydraulic fluid, carbon tet, all these are solvable items. And we have another security measure of putting in this, shall I use the word, chemical barrier, a vapor barrier, which we would require, preventing any potential volatile organic materials. You have to realize that this site is going to be excavated. The entire site where these homes are going to be situated is going to be excavated anyway to receive a foundation, to receive an Alaskan slab. Immediately, code enforcement is going to observe, wait a minute, what's that smell? What's that discoloration? They're going to go through, we're going to request a phase 2. We're going to work that out with the applicant, but recognize site disturbance will occur in the placement of roads, in the placement of the foundations. Inherently, there's going to be testing that goes with that if these chemicals are observed, detected. Okay, so that's another layer of investigation for this site. So from an engineering perspective, I feel they have provided enough thus far to support a negative declaration. That doesn't alleviate the need for advancing to final design. It doesn't alleviate the need for a phase 2 testing, which we're going to request. It doesn't alleviate the need to provide a safe, wholesome area, place to live for these people. And I wanted to share that. I think what the applicant has communicated to myself and to the Commissioner of Planning, they want to advance this and they want to, shall I say, present the material to the city council to approve the PDD. It's a procedural issue. Having said that, I do want to defer to the city attorney.
So are you deferring to the city attorney on the question of whether or not we can do a negative declaration tonight and still require a phase 2 at some?
That's correct.
Some future time?
That phase 2 is a engineering consideration, which I feel is absolutely necessary. And we would ask that of any applicant in this situation. But there's enough environmental and scientific controls in here to reduce substantially the potential for a problem. Our job is maintaining public safety. That's our creed. That's a mandatory requirement that all of us here in this room take very seriously. And luckily, there are mechanisms in place that give reasonable assurance of that. Namely, the excavation of the soils for every single foundation, excavation of soils for the placement of roads. If there's a problem, if there's an element of contamination, it will be picked up immediately. I should point out that many of these chemicals, they are detectable in parts per million. And you say, what the heck is, well, if you picture you have 1 million red M&Ms, that one green one, that is detectable because of the volatile organics. And that's in soil. That's how detectable these things are. In water, it's parts per billion that's detectable, surprisingly. So I just wanted to share that. Our job is public safety. Our job is to ensure that we've dotted the I's to cross the T's. And those are my thoughts I wanted to share.
Okay.
Thank
you, Russ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That
I'll put this faulty microphone back.
All right.
It's upside down.
Put in a requisition for a new one, will you, Russ?
So
Mr. City
if
Attorney?
this were an unlisted action, the board could make a condition, negative declaration on condition, for example, that the applicant conduct a phase 2 study. However, I think it's been determined this is a type 1 action due to the open public space in the immediate vicinity. So you don't have that option. Really, it's going to be ultimately your decision whether or not you want to, whether or not you find that there are no significant adverse environmental effects. My concern is that, without that phase 2 study, and this is by the way, I've actually heard of the solvents and fuel oil that were actually on the site. I didn't hear that from the applicant before. I'm a little disappointed in that. So you're kind of shooting in the dark and there is no, it wouldn't be, the applicant isn't being required by the secret process to do if you do a negative declaration. I'm a conservative lawyer, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. That's just how I look at things. And if I don't see the great burden in doing a phase 2, but maybe the applicant wants to speak to that. I don't see the great burden in doing it so that the board can be assured that there at least will be no significant environmental impacts, or that if there are, they will be properly mitigated. I would rather know than not.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. I think the question is there any mechanism, if we were to give a neg deck tonight, is there any mechanism for any of the other players in the process to require a phase 2 other than relying on the goodwill of the applicant?
I don't mean to interject in deliberations, but the applicant did want me to state on the record that we would be willing to do a phase two in conjunction with Russ. It sounds like Russ is going to require it anyway, but if you need an assurance that it will take place, we can give it to you as the applicant. We're consenting on the record that a phase two will be conducted as the project progresses, and even a phase two conducted before we come back to you for a final site plan review. We're just asking you to take the position that now that you have an assurance that a phase two is going to happen, and Russ has given you an assurance he's going to require it, we ask you to consider the neg deck. And I'm sorry to interrupt your
No,
deliberations.
that's all right. Then I guess the next question would be, if there were a phase two done and it were to reveal something that we would want mitigated, would we have a mechanism for doing that?
Not unless you revisit your determination and then do a pause deck, and then they would have to scope it and EIS and all that. You don't have, that requirement could be done by the city engineer, but that's not, that would be, that's technically outside of the secret process at that point.
And I think what would happen is if something is discovered, we have mandatory reporting requirements to DEC, which they had mentioned in their letter. So it would become a spill response and an open spill file, which frankly, they have a lot more teeth to make sure it gets resolved than a municipality does. So we have an obligation, anyone has a legal obligation when a volatile organic compound is found in the ground to immediately contact DEC, which we know, and that's when they would open the spill, and that's how it would be addressed. But to your specific question about seeker, there is language in seeker that gives a lead agency the ability to reopen the seeker process based upon supplemental and new information being provided or discovered.
So we would get a second bite at the apple if we find that there's something volatile in the soil after phase two is completed. If
it would be your first bite of the apple, because you say we're not giving you site plan approval. We're not approving anything because now you found something. But at that point, candidly, you would be less of a concern for us because we'd be dealing directly with the DEC spill response team. So we'd have to address their concerns, and site plan review would become, I think, much less of an issue for the applicant than addressing and remediating anything that's found.
How much would a phase two actually entail for the applicant? I understand the time delay, but
my understanding of it is it's in conjunction with the people who are requesting it. So it's a question, it's a negotiation. How many holes are you going to poke? How deep are you going to go? What exactly are you going to be doing? And we can work out all of those parameters with Russ, but it would involve a delay in setting up the phase two is going to entail, as well as the additional cost. We'll bear the additional cost, but we were hoping that we wouldn't get slowed down in the secret process as a result of it. And that's why we were willing to put on the record that we're committing to doing it.
So Rich, my understanding now is the pinch point here is that, they want to get in front of the council.
that's the pinch point. And I guess, you make the determination when you're satisfied that you have sufficient information to make, to make a declaration one way or the other. So that's, that is your purview to decide that.
So you mentioned that we don't have the power to demand another round of testing. We can't do that.
You do that, you do now.
We do now.
Yeah, you do now. And you would, I think as Andy, you do right now before you declare because that would be saying you don't have sufficient information to make the declaration. But as Andy said, there is a process in seeker, if you were to neg deck this tonight, and something was discovered there, you could reopen your consideration and change it to a positive declaration. But that would be it's a bit extraordinary, but it is provided for in the law.
You can tell us all night long that you're gonna proceed with phase two, and actually not. And you can say to us, "Well, I changed my mind. We're not going to do it."
But we need to come back to you for final site plan approval.
Right.
So we're representing tonight as part of that process, we will do the phase two. If we don't come back with the phase two, then you can look right at me and say, you said you were going to do this. You didn't, you're not getting site plan approval.
I'm not calling you a liar, but.
No, I understand.
From what Rick said, is that we don't have the power to do that. To make
No.
them-
Not as part of the seeker process. What Andy is saying is that he's still under your thumb in the sense for the site plan review.
site plan
Okay,
review.
so I mean, I take the applicant at his word that he will do what Russ is requiring.
Yeah.
And will not, put a stick in your eye in that respect. It's just a question of whether you're comfortable, whether you feel you have sufficient information today to make a declaration that there are going to be no significant adverse environmental impacts from this project.
So the question I have would be the timeframes of this. If there was a neg deck tonight and when's it go in front of the council,
We try and get it onto their next meeting cycle,
which is
April.
it'd be April. So
A-
that puts them back here in May, right? Is that right?
I don't know if they'll be ready
Yeah,
or
I
not.
don't know if we could have a phase two done by May.
All right. So the reason why I'm asking that is obviously you'd like to get construction season in summer.
Yes, yes, we would. But to borrow Rick's legal term, we are under your thumb. We have to come back to you.
Yeah, but I take the applicant at his word too, applicant's representative, but as a legal matter, just pure academic interest, would it be legally sustainable to deny site plan approval based upon their refusal to do something that they're not required to do? That is the phase two. Not legally required to do. If you can follow me.
It might not be, I mean, but would there be a challenge? I mean, the applicant has incentives to cooperate with you for other aspects of the site plan. But a good point.
Well, that's kind of what I was asking. Can we give them a negative declaration? With having to have the phase done.
So you could if this was an unlisted action, but because it's a type 1 action, because of the open space across the street, there is no provision for a condition negative declaration in the seeker regulations.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have to have further public comment. do we? No. All right, yeah. All right, so what's your pleasure, folks? One discussion and then a motion and then discussion?
Yeah. So I think where we're at is, the fact that it has to go to the council is really the issue. Otherwise, we could easily just say, hey, come back with your phase two next meeting.
Yeah.
So, it's the chicken and the egg scenario is what we have. I'm a firm believer that this place needs a phase two. There's no doubt about it. And the phase one's old. And, there's a lot of demo that went on. There's a lot of demo that went on. There could have been hydraulic fluid from a machine or diesel fuel or whatever, which may not be a huge mitigation thing, but still, we don't know. And, so we're kind of in a situation where if we don't move it along, they're delayed at the council. And it's a tough one. Yeah.
Public safety first.
Yeah.
Can we make them do another phase one?
An update.
As
Updated
as
phase
the
one.
lead agency for the seeker, you can require you can require any information that is reasonable for them to provide, including another phase one or an updated phase one or just a phase two.
But another option.
I
would
think
be-
they'd be willing to do a phase two if they were actually required rather than.
So another option would be to bring them back next meeting with a phase two. I don't know if they can get it done that quick. Be quick. But then we could do a neg deck, send it to the council. That puts them in June.
Is there anything to be gained by a phase one if we require a phase two?
I think you could forego that. The only thing, what's happened at the site is a demolition and apparently the discovery of some volatiles there that I was not fully aware of. So,
Okay, any further discussion? Is there a motion?
My head.
Yeah, I moved to table to the next meeting in lieu of getting us a phase two for that meeting.
So do we require a phase two?
Yeah, it would require phase two for the next meeting.
Is there a second for that proposition?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. So that's it?
Come back for the-
So it's just on to the next.
Will you be able to get that done for the next meeting?
I can't guarantee by next meeting. We'll certainly try.
Okay.
We'll pinch for time now, but.
I think, you know, Russ will work with you closely and, you know, how many holes he wants, I have no idea, I guess.
Okay.
Fewer.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Fewer homes.
I didn't see it. Next item is 2025-0012, 219 Fourth Street. Is the applicant or representative present? Hi, yes, come on forward, please, and identify yourself and tell us about your application.
How are you? My name is Adam Patella of Local Design Studio. I'm the architect of record for this project. This is Hernan Lopez. He's the owner of Alias Coffee, who's the tenant of the building. Right now, Alias Coffee occupies approximately 900 square feet of an existing building. The entire existing building is approximately 3,000 square feet. Hernan would like to expand his use into the remainder of the building, including kind of a central part of the building, which we use as a gathering space, as well as the rear, which would include an additional egress corridor, additional bathrooms, a small room for coffee roasting, and a garage space for his commercial van that he has. I suppose what we're ultimately seeking by the end of this process is to be classified as an assembly venue space. Is that the correct terminology? Maybe leaning on Eric a little bit here.
Assembly meeting space.
An assembly meeting space, which is mostly to be able to accommodate community gatherings as well as occasional ticketed musical events and other gatherings of that sort that he would have in that central space. But primarily the central space is to be used for cafe kind of space and things like that. If you look at the plan, there's a note about an occasional bar. Hernan either has or will be seeking an SLA approval for beer, wine, and cider to be served occasionally at gatherings and ticketed events, not as a full-time kind of bar in the community.
Okay, anything further?
I don't think so. We were kind of reminded to go over the kind of 8 points that you
Yes.
as a board consider. I'm happy to read these. I've also submitted these to Eric if it's just easier to go through it that way.
I didn't get them until a little
Yeah,
bit too late.
Is it easiest just to read this now?
If you'd like, yeah, you could go down the line of questioning. Peter, you might want to narrate what each question is going to be. The applicant could provide an answer to. That's going to be required as part of the finding of facts form that has to emanate from this board.
I guess it's worth noting also that the The maximum occupant load of the space would be 99 people. We've had discussions with building code officials as well as fire officials to kind of verify that, which is part of the reason for the additional egress corridor out the back of the building. There's no changes to the front facade. Changes to the rear facade basically entail kind of mirroring the location of the existing overhead door and adding an additional egress door out the back in the area that's been wood framed already.
How many exits?
There'd be two. So one in the front and one in the rear. There's a door out the side, but that is in the eyes of kind of building code, not able to be called an exit because of its location and some other factors. So the exits would be at the front and the rear.
They would be kept unlocked.
Yeah, they would be fully code compliant exits and modes of egress in the eyes of the building code. Yeah.
All right, so I'll present the questions that are in the code and or
Sure.
statements, I think, basically.
I'll do my best to
Give
keep it brief,
response.
but
Yeah, all right.
it's,
So the first one is the consistency and compatibility of the proposed use with the purposes of this chapter and the requirements of the use district and development intensity zone in which it is located. So how
Sure.
do you-
The property is located in mixed use 1, which is described as a district which supports a variety of housing options with small scale services and shops serving the adjacent neighborhoods in concentrated areas to generate activity and commerce.
Excuse me.
This project, in our eyes, will generate activity and commerce by offering increased service and capacity at one of the few neighborhood cafes, as well as be a viable option for neighborhood group gatherings. It serves the adjacent neighborhood via high level of walkability and proximity relative to similar services in the city. Additionally, the property is located in a neighborhood 3 zone. There is an extensive description of what neighborhood 3 is, but I think that the important part for maybe this project is the streetscapes, are intended to be well-defined with structures located close to the sidewalk edge, side yards, or modest and attached structures which are common. Neighborhood walkability and a safe public realm are critical for neighborhood interaction. And I think this project maintains, as in it does not change the existing building. It maintains the mix of structures and architecture within the neighborhood. It maintains a well-defined streetscape, engages the sidewalk through signage, a bay window, and seasonal outdoor seating, which work to reinforce walkability and public activity.
Okay. Questions on that, anyone? The next one is the consistency and compatibility of the proposed use with the goals and recommendations of the City of Troy Comprehensive Plan, Complete Streets Ordinance, and other approved city plans and programs.
So in reference to the compatibility with the City of Troy Comprehensive Plan, this supports principle number 1, which is to grow the economy and population by expanding a local business, specifically in areas adjacent to the city center. In reference to goal 1.1 of section 4, it contributes to an appropriate mix of retail services as well as small scale business to meet the needs of local residents and provide employment opportunities by offering a cafe and workspace otherwise unavailable in the immediate neighborhood. In reference to goal 1.2.6, the project offers gathering and display spaces for existing and new creative and cultural industries, such as visual and musical artists. It also supports nearly all of goal number 6, which is to support compact growth by being in accordance with the land use designation, which is section 6.1, focuses on walk-in patronage, making no changes to the existing low and medium rise structures of the neighborhood, which is in reference to section 6.2, and it offers cultural opportunities, referencing section 6.3.1. And it's a small scale retailer offering entertainment options to both the immediate and surrounding communities, which references goal 6.4.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Number 3, the impact on the nature and character of the surrounding neighborhood, natural environment, historic district, or corridor in which it is located.
This project's in an existing building with no changes other than an exterior light in the alley and the aforementioned kind of modifications to the existing overhead door. Therefore, there's no significant impacts on the nature and character of the surrounding neighborhood, natural environment, historic district, or corridor in which it's located. It's not located within the historic district. And the previously approved facade conditions will remain unchanged.
Thank you. Any questions? Number 4, the impact on the site and its surroundings, considering environmental, social, and economic impacts of traffic, noise, dust, odors, release of harmful substances, solid waste disposal, glare, or any other nuisances.
This project does not propose any new construction or change in the building footprint. Therefore, there's no impact on the site or its surroundings. There will be no significant traffic impact as a maximum total occupancy of 99 people, which is really only reasonably expected during a performance, as well within, we feel, the capacity of the surrounding streets and public parking opportunities. Musical performances will be held inside in the center of the building within concrete walls. There's no change relative to dust or harmful substances, solid waste, or other nuisances. The coffee roaster, which will be properly vented according to a variety of codes and instructions based on the coffee roaster itself, into the alley or through the roof of the building. And the roasting is in small batch and occasional. It's not a 12-hour a day kind of roasting facility.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Number 5, restrictions or conditions on design of structures or operation of the use, including hours of operation necessary to ensure compatibility with the surrounding uses or to protect the natural resources of the city.
The immediate block surrounding the project now includes a very large restaurant space. The New DeFazio's is right across the street, as well as other smaller restaurants. I believe there's a Caribbean restaurant takeout place that is open or is kind of about to be open, both north and south of the property. The requested increase in operation hours, which is to go from 7 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock a.m., are not really in excess of any of these other businesses or the convenience stores in the immediate area. And there's no aspects of this project which would impact natural resources on the city. The extended hours would be only in the event of an event, not necessarily 7 to 12, 6 or 7 days a week. Be only when there's a ticketed event or a function or a public gathering happening, like a Little Italy public watch group or something like that.
So are you saying that in no event would it go past midnight, but in ordinarily times not even that long? Or what are you saying about hours?
Right. I think we're requesting that the hours of operation be approved to be from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. But the reality is that daily operation is not intended to go to midnight. It would be only in the event of
an event.
Yeah, normally the cafe closes at 5 o'clock, and that would be kind of the typical thing. I think a lot of this is to cover as many bases as possible, so that when there is an event, it's well within kind of what's already been approved.
Thank you. Any questions? The adequacy and accessibility of essential public facilities and services such as streets, parking spaces, police and fire protection, drainage structures, refuse disposal, water and sewer, and schools.
The project's immediately adjacent to the sidewalk and street. And again, there's no change to the footprint at all in the project, with unobstructed alley access for police and fire. Though I guess based on previous conversation, the fire department prefers to not really consider the alley as a primary means of access anyway. Police and fire protections therefore are unaffected. There will be an additional egress corridor and exit added to the structure to ensure code compliance associated with a larger occupant load. There's no changes to the drainage of the building, the methods of waste disposal, or drastic water or sewage usage. 1 or 2 single user bathrooms are proposed as part of the expanded use.
Questions? Number 7, the impact of the proposed use on traffic congestion, impairment of pedestrian safety, or overload of existing streets, considering their current width, surfacing, and condition, and any improvements proposed to be made by the applicant.
The project is adjacent to a large public parking lot, which is the Little Italy lot, which is kind of behind the New DeFazio's, as well as there's ample on-street parking in that neighborhood. The project maintains a high level of pedestrian safety through well-maintained exterior seasonal seating areas, and the streets and sidewalks of the immediate area have been recently upgraded and improved both by, I believe, the city and or National Grid. It was kind of part of that South Troy kind of repaving and reconditioning of the sidewalks.
Questions? Number 8, compatibility of the proposed use with the city's historic preservation guidelines and the impact on adjacent historic resources as formally recognized by the city's historic districts and the New York State and federal registers of historic places.
So again, the project's not located within any historic district, and there's no changes to the primary facade of the project anyway.
Thank you. And no questions. All right. Thank you.
May I ask just a couple of questions, random questions? Of course. Will the cafe be open for any scheduled event? So you said you close at 5 typically?
Yes.
Would it stay open for a scheduled event?
Yes. Yes, every now and then we hold community events or arts events.
So I think what he means is that the cafe and cafe service would be open when an event is being held.
Thank you. What is the frequency that you imagine events to happen?
They're kind of random, once every other month, or every 2 months.
Okay, so yeah, that's a general. Yeah.
I think that right now there are maybe once every other month or something, but I think maybe we would seek an approval that considers maybe a monthly event.
Probably taking it up a little bit.
Or one every 3 weeks, especially if I think between both a ticketed event and a community event, such as neighborhood watch groups and things like that, there might be an uptick in frequency, but it's not intended to become a full, no fun kind of venue 3 days a week. 4 days a
Yeah,
week.
no, I kind of want to piggyback into the next question I have, because the reason I ask is I've been informed by other local business owners in the neighborhood that parking is an issue. So, you know, like if there was an event that was happening like twice a week, Friday, Saturday, right? That might pose a concern for surrounding businesses or homes or something or people that rely on the off-street parking situation. So I was just kind of getting a general idea. And I think for the public's knowledge, you know, in terms of what they could expect, it would be good to just have that on the record. So, I mean, I think with the use of this space, you're allowed to tick it up a little bit, you know, in terms of your frequency of events. But just something to be mindful of, because I don't know that parking is like ideal right now. And I know that there's.
Is the lot behind the Fazios, is a public lot, right? Or is it?
Like
it's a City of Troy lot, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
it's this one he's talking about.
Public
Yeah, it's
market.
the Little League market.
Yeah, that's actually slated for. That is actually. The marketplace is slated for substantial development in terms of a public recreation area. And I do not know for sure, but I do not think the public parking is going to continue in that space. So it exists now, but ultimately I think the vision for that space is a place where people can recreate, pedestrian recreation more. So that sort of thing. And bocce ball, and I don't know. There are a few courts there now on the south end, but they're going to put in a playground for children and other things like that.
Yeah, and I don't know that you guys are. I don't know that you guys are really mandated to supply any kind of like parking initiative plan, but you know, it's just something that I know that local business owners have talked to me about a little bit, parking. But you know, you've got your statements that you've made for the record and everything. We'll review some of that stuff. If there's some helpful alternatives that we can provide some feedback to, I mean, we'll certainly do that. But I just wanted to get some of that stuff on the record. As traffic is, and I know that Little Italy parking spot is kind of up for review right now.
So Hernan, how many of your customers now drive? A lot of from your neighborhood, correct?
Yeah, mostly from the neighborhood.
Right. So
But
all the
again,
way-
we close at 5 o'clock for coffee during the day. It's not an issue.
Right.
Didn't we, right at the point there, didn't we approve a project is going to be a small event space also?
That's another one across, that's across the street.
Right, at the point. on
Yes,
point.
at 212 4th Street.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of events down there.
Resurgence of Little Italy.
Any other questions?
I think there were some staff comments. One of them was question number 20 on the short form seeker, which is related to environmental mitigation, I believe, on the site or adjacent sites. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, that yes answer was automatically generated by the seeker kind of online platform that the city uses. To the best of our knowledge, there's no this wasn't like a laundromat or something with some high intensity use. And I suspect that it might be in reference to the project you just mentioned, which was kind of on the point there, which I believe used to be a gas station many, many years ago. And that might be something that's triggering kind of that yes box to be checked with adjacent projects.
But that was remediated by the state, I think, right?
Yeah. So I guess I'm not sure why it was checked yes. I think it was automatically generated, but to our knowledge, we don't know why, I suppose.
Yeah, I can concur with that statement. There's another applicant who had a similar circumstance happen. So I told them that until, we'll have a chance to look at it over the next couple of weeks or so.
All right. Anything further?
I believe the only other request was to provide a lighting, like a cut sheet or a lighting detail, which we can provide for the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, you'll want to review the application's completeness. If you guys, it is a type 2, so seeker's not in play here. So if you'd like to review that completeness factor and schedule that hearing, you're open to do that.
Review it, and
you're free to do that. You're free to schedule a hearing, and if you think that the application is complete.
So
Eric, I have a question for you. Says board to decide on length of time for the special use permit.
Yeah, every special
implies-
use permit requires the board to determine how long they want to do it for, if it's temporary, if it's permanent, or if it's conditioned.
Okay. So what we're looking for is a permanent special use permit, as long as this business is operating as is.
I think there's a discussion between you and the
We'd
applicant.
certainly like that.
Right, because a special use permits criteria will end if and correct me if I'm wrong, if it does end with the change of ownership.
Okay.
Am I correct in that? Or tenancy?
I look at the code. I'm sorry.
It's not something that we need to determine right now.
Right.
I think you guys should probably review the findings of facts that the applicant has provided for you and the readout of those questions and answers. And then at the next meeting, you guys can all come to your final conclusions.
So we wait until the next meeting to declare the application complete?
You
No.
And then schedule it for a hearing?
If you think there's enough before you to declare it complete, or if you would like more information, then you would let the applicant know what you require in order to get to a complete application. So for the next,
And do we need public comment tonight before we make that determination?
No, you would have I guess the code requirement is that you hold a public hearing within 62 days after you deem the application complete. So it doesn't say that you couldn't schedule the public hearing for the next time, even if you anticipate declaring the application complete next time, or are willing to declare it complete tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Motion. I think I would like to make a motion to make the application complete tonight and schedule a hearing.
Second?
I'll second that.
2 seconds. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And motion carries. Now, do we schedule it for the next meeting?
Yep. So I'd like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing for the next meeting, which would be April
22nd.
22nd.
Second?
Second that motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. See you next month.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Is there any other business to come before the planning board?
We do have one other applicant on the agenda. I'm not sure if he had a the same agenda. okay? We've got 18 to 20 still. PLPC 20250006.
It's just above this one. Oh, I skipped one?
Yes, you did.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Sorry about that, folks. You could have been home
I'm
an
one of those
hour ago.
strange people that finds this stuff interesting.
I apologize.
No problem.
Uh,
My name's Dan Carlin. I'm here with
Hi,
Frank.
my name is Jenny Casal again. I am architect. I am in charge of the design of this project, and he's done we work together. And then I don't know if you are familiar with the project, but it's basically in 2023 was a building with 6 units, 2 bedrooms and 4 one-bedroom. Because of the fire, basically the building disappeared. They cleaned out the lot, and they had the insurance allow them to redo the building. And our application basically show a site plan with different footprint of the building, but we keep the program where we're existing, which was the two bedroom unit, 4 one-bedroom unit. Because some regulations are new and changed, and the building was very old, we have basically adjusted each apartment with 700 square foot. In order to make it functional and optimize the area of circulation, we propose the side of the building as an entrance, and then work better for don't make a long corridor from the street to the entrance to the 4 apartments. The location, yes, is here. So this one. And the lot is a little bit irregular in their shape, but we work with that, and the didn't before was like the building, the existing building, and it doesn't have any front setback. Now, with the regulations, we propose a front setback and access to the back, because has almost like more than 200 linear foot depth, the lot. We propose 4 car parking spaces in the back, and with 1 entrance in the side, which is exceed the 10 minimum side yard. We propose 14 in order to do the access, the car access, and the entrance to the side entrance of the building. So basically, that is the concept of this new project. Make a little garden in the front, garden in the back, 4 car garage, 1 is with accessible handicap, parking spaces, and 1 will be accessible in case. And we have basically almost in the same level. We're gonna just go like a couple of steps in the first floor. There you go. Here, we propose a little garden in this back. We are proposing the front back, and the access of the building is in the middle, because we optimize in the way that the functional is that we have a small area of circulation, and the 2 bedrooms here, 1 and another 1 bedroom. And that's why, and it's gonna be closer to the parking spaces too. I think we complied with everything. We exceed a little bit of the area where was the prior building, which we have to talk with the insurance company, because we are limited of what they request. They usually request insurance company to do something like was before. you cannot do many changes because every change, what we have to do imply for my client to increase his budget. And that's why we try to make it work as well with a comfortable layout for each apartment, and 700 square feet is one.
All right,
Okay.
any questions?
Where is-
How many square feet are the apartments?
700 each apartment, and it's 700 each apartment. Exactly.
I mean,
I got it.
I believe there's 6.
Yeah, it's 6, yes, and per floor, exactly. Thank you.
There was 8 in the original building. To meet the square foot criteria, cut it down to 6. Parking area.
Yeah, sorry, the 2 bedrooms is 837 square foot, and the one bedrooms in the back are 701 square foot. And the common areas are, because the entrance in the middle optimize don't make longer corridors, is basically 139 square foot.
how is the parking in the rear access? Is there an alley back there?
Excuse me, sorry about
There's
that.
gonna be a driveway.
Pardon me?
Yeah,
The driveway.
Beside the building or?
No, to the side of the building.
was before in the layout, I could
Isn't there a
explain
street
this.
next to the other building?
Yeah, here, if you see the entrance is in the right side, left side of the building, here, the.
Jenny, can you please use the microphone?
and this is the-
You can take.
Sorry, yeah.
You want to bring it over?
As you see it, the entrance of the sidewalk is gonna be here, and then the driveway in this way to make 3 cars and 1 accessible parking for anything. And here is the entrance to the building.
And so how they get out by backing out that driveway?
I did this, this has 24, more than 24, and then they could go in backward and go out. So it has enough space to turn the car and go out. Yes, it's little tight, really. The lot has just 50 linear foot. And then that was the solution for the driveway.
Any other questions?
So with a building this small with only a few apartments, is there any need for plugins or handicap parking?
There is 1 spot.
So out of that 4, there's 1 handicap
Correct.
parking.
You saw the staff report?
Yes, we're working through that with Jenny and the engineer.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, we are working through that list with the engineer and Jenny. We're addressing all of those issues right now.
You don't
We know
see
we're early in the process. We're just looking for feedback to see if we're going in the right direction.
any there that jump out at you is going to be impossible for you to do?
No.
All right.
Can I ask a quick question? Code question. Still have my code hat on. Does this have a rear entrance?
Has a rear entrance. When all first floor are 3 apartments and just has the side entrance for the main entrance of the building. We were looking to do, but it's not secure to do the main entrance for each building could be have an entrance, but we think for security issues will be better just to have 1 entrance and the main of egress windows.
So you're going to rely on windows for emergency escape.
Exactly.
That might not fly, just as a heads up. I know that the previous structure that existed there were code concerns about that layout, the building's layout. So I would just consider some space that you might provide an emergency exit.
All right.
1 exit in, 1 exit out. You said, and this is going to be 2 floors, correct?
It's just 2 floors,
Yeah.
yes. The idea, thank you for your feedback about that design, because to avoid sprinkles too,
Yeah, I'm
sprinkles,
familiar.
yeah, will be better for us to do each apartment of the first floor with their own entrance, and just the 3 apartments in the second floor to go out from the entrance in the side. That
Have you spoken with the building department at all about this? Have they reviewed your plans?
we just spoke with you.
Okay, I wouldn't shy away from reviewing some of these with the building department and the plans examiners. And in theory, you know, an applicant might apply for a building permit and then they would refer an applicant to us if they were seen to have any zoning issues or require planning, which I do think that this did get sort of a preliminary review or analysis by Carlo in the building department. But I would probably just be mindful of that particular detail about a second fire escape.
All right, thank you. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Any other questions? Are there 3 floors or
2.
3 floors or 2?
It's just 2 stories.
Just 2 floors?
Yes.
Okay, because I thought I heard you mention a 3rd floor.
No, there is a basement, but no
Okay.
use for all. Just a question, o sea, with this layout, we could proceed to development, is what I understand.
No, I would probably, you know, I would probably get a little feedback if you're able. You know,
Yes.
Dan, you're more local than Jenny is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So I mean, you might, and we can, this is something that we can also get in our staff review, but I know that did come up in our staff review this past month. You know, the concern that there isn't a secondary egress.
all right.
I don't know that windows are going to cut it. And while that is an applicable code provision in New York State Building Code, that should probably get some degree of review or analysis, vetting, if you will, by either the fire department or the building department. And if you want, I can kind of have those talks with Carlos sooner than later in terms of what he might think. I wouldn't want you guys kind of going full throttle towards something that is going to have to get reversed. So.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Are they going to have to get some variances here also?
Yeah, they would
Setback?
need. Yeah,
Setback, yeah.
at least this,
Outside
well, you've got at least 2 that were identified right out of the gate, and that would be like the entrance that's not facing a public street, which is what previous applicant was up here for. And another one would be the side setback, which is a 10-foot maximum. And with the driveway to the north side, you know, that puts the house setback 14 feet. And, you know, I've been talking with the applicant in terms of like the site design and layout and everything like that. So I would think that if they're choosing this pathway, right, to provide off-street parking, then I would be cognizant of an 8-foot wide driveway. Because 8 feet is the bare minimum for New York State standards. And that's pretty narrow. If you're also talking about having that entrance right next to that 8-foot wide driveway, that also kind of makes me curious.
Yeah, I propose 4 feet sidewalk, but it can be 3
Mhm.
and can be 9 feet
And
driveway.
I mean, it's also noted you've got some wiggle room on the south side of the building as well.
Yeah,
So, because the side setbacks for this neighborhood are 0 to 10-foot max.
the only thing I didn't went through because it's assessment, there is 4 feet assessment. In here, do you see this line?
Mhm.
That is 4 feet a 4 feet existing assessment that I cannot touch it. And then that's why I get into that line there.
And I'm sorry, and forgive me, but did you say this easement or
Easement. yes.
easement? Okay. Is that on your survey?
Yes, it is in the survey. There you go. And let me see, is here showing, there you go.
Yeah.
Consider that easement is impossible for me to go through that. The maximum I could do for the side yard, sidewalk and the driveway is basically 14 feet.
Mhm.
I was, yes, that is one in consideration. The easement is what limited off of 0 side yard.
Yeah, I understand. Sure. Was there any discussion about placing the entryway towards the front?
Yeah, I was speaking with Jorel, which is the engineering, is going to be in charge of development of site plan. The possibility to change the entrance to that size, but he has to figure out how works better the parking, the inside parking, because we want to get more than just 4. There is 6 apartment. If we get 6, it will be better. But this was my preliminary schematic site plan, which in base of that, I developed the apartments, then in between the program, where we are limited of.
I know in our staff meeting, I know that there was also some concern by the building department, the fire department, that the driveway itself would be utilized as a parking area. So it would just be sort of echo some caution if you're trying to get more parking in there, just the city staff have requested that the parking driveway be left an open lane.
Oh, all right.
So obviously anybody trying to get out that's parked in the back can't with anybody blocking the driveway. So
yeah, I understand the issue, definitely.
there is on-street parking.
Oh.
And also parking is not, it's not required, right? So the applicant is going out of their way to try to provide that for their tenants. So that should be known too.
Previous condition, was there parking in the rear?
Wasn't a parking at all.
There was no parking at all
No,
in the
wasn't a
previous
parking at all. Yes, was in the front of the street, which I feel like it's very uncomfortable and insecure for anybody else. That could be, that is why I thought will be very convenient that to have the parking inside. The lot is deep enough to do it.
My name is Gerardo. I'm homeowner of Hudson Valley. My name is Gerardo. So if we don't require to have a parking lot, if it's not necessary, is you did the building can be placed in a different direction or move a little bit to the right or to the left, we consider, because that is also a cost of the homeowner. We only using the home insurance what they're paying for to replace the building existing conditions or a little bit better, but that's it. They're not going to pay for anything that is not required. You know what I'm saying? If it's not necessary that we're using parking, because I understand if it's not required, then we don't have to.
So why did she say you wanted to send the building back?
We were just basically using, because we told that, I was talking to somebody, in the building department.
Can you state your name again for the record?
Gerardo Moreno.
You're the contractor.
I'm the homeowner. I'm the owner of the home, Hudson Valley Home Restoration.
Okay. So, all right.
Yeah. So that's why, if we don't have to use a parking, I prefer not to use it just for the, to help the homeowner pretty much.
But maybe clear this up for me. The request for parking, that was my understanding, a request of the owner of the property.
At one point, he's here, he's Frank. He did not request parking usually. Somebody just brought out to the building department, told us that we need parking space. And that's basically how we started going on with the parking. But we don't have to have a parking because this is only doing it basically that when the money insurance comes back to us.
Okay, because the evolution of this review was that I reviewed a drawing that had parking in front of the building, in which case we knew that was not going to fly pretty much because that's kind of an outdated standard. So in response to that, the homeowner had informed me that they were thinking of then putting parking in the rear of the building, which we would have preferred over the front of the building, which would have required additional variances and such. So it's your guys' decision as to what you guys want to put down on this. But just be cognizant that if you want to change your design, then to ensure that all the zoning regulations are sort of applied to this when you come back. So, I mean, whether or not you want to or not, it is your decision.
I don't, can I just ask a question? Why are they doing this setback for the building when they don't have to have clearance there? Why are they setting the building back?
The 10 feet back, setback from setback. It required is between 0 to 10. Was just to do something with the environment plants, thing like that treatment.
Well, again, I looked at a drawing that had a
This is the
parking
front,
in front. Because
first drawing.
I think the narrative is changing a little bit in real time. So I would say just kind of like I'll put your thinking caps on together and figure out what one design is going to look like so that we have some definitive things to weigh. I think you've got your list of items in terms of what you would be looking for variance for. I think I've referenced for you some of like the chapters in the zoning code for take into consideration. If you wanted to have,
Right on the sidewalk.
you wanted to have a lawn, not seen as a bad thing, right?
Right.
But again, you guys put down what you want, and make sure that that is definitive.
Thank you, Eric. I consider everything what you say, and I think we're gonna redesign the site plan with Jorel based off all our conversations, and I appreciate all feedback in that matter.
Yeah, your front setback is 0. So
Yeah, I think we work
in
better.
theory, you could just bring this up to the street if you didn't want to provide parking, but I mean, what we have right now is a problem with parking across the city. So seeing somebody try to accommodate their tenants, not a bad thing, but again, not a requirement.
All right.
If you do increase your bedroom count, you may be required to provide traffic study. So I would also just refer to 28569. That it's the chapter in our zoning code that addresses parking.
25.
So if you reconstruct your design, if you reconfigure the building, you place it someplace else on the site plan, you increase any kind of bed counts or bedroom counts, increase parking surface areas or whatnot, you might be required to address traffic studies.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
I mean, you guys have more questions? I didn't want to take over that.
No,
so.
but so they're setting, are they going for a 0 clearance on Stowe Avenue and put it right on the sidewalk as the other 2 buildings? Or are they moving their building back?
What could be?
I think
do
they
the-
have to go back to the drawing board a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys are kind of trying to reevaluate this in real time. And they are trying to get feedback from you guys as if this were sketch plan. So if you have suggestions. now's
Yeah,
the time.
I think that
The biggest
that
suggestion was the 2 exits.
The 2 exits.
2 stairs.
Yeah, I would be very, very cognizant of that. Fire department, building department do want to see a second exit. I mean, it's going to take some crafty architectural skill sets to be able to accommodate this design with 1 entrance. It's just not, it's not advised.
all right. Okay. Yeah, when we were talking with Jorel, we were analyzing the site plan, and he say is we have 0 side yard. Could be we're gonna go with it. We address it in different way. We could address it to the side that there's no the easement. No, and then the entrance could be better in the another side because we could be have for 18 feet side yard.
Mhm.
The only thing I have to redesign the 2 exits for that departments.
Yeah, and I mean, I would also just, if possible, try to reduce any variance requests, right? So if there's wiggle room to put the entrance in front facing the public street where your back entrance or your back exit faces the said parking lot right now.
Yeah.
But you do have space to work with, so
Yes,
I encourage you to
there you go.
keep brainstorming.
Just one question I have in mind right now, because if we move the building against the size so the easement is gonna count as a part of the side yard because we have to respect the 4 feet. And if we put the entrance,
The question essentially is, do they have to, are they prohibited from infringing on the easement with their design?
You mean putting the building on the easement?
Yeah, no, I said, how count the easement as a side yard? Because if we move in another side, we're gonna have 18 and it's 10 feet maximum, right?
It's 10-foot maximum. It's 0 is required. So I
Yeah.
mean, you don't need to have any space,
In
but
both
you
sides.
can't, and you can't exceed 10, right, without having to go for a variance.
Yeah, that will be, but if we
So
move it in one
if I
side.
understand the question correctly, are you asking whether or not you can build on the easement with the
Yes.
building's footprint?
Yeah, that is another question.
So you can't put the building on the easement. Well, I haven't read the easement, so I don't really know what it says.
Can you
okay?
get a copy of that?
Assuming it's an access easement,
Yeah.
you have to leave the access open. A driveway could be part of, I mean, I don't know what would prohibit a driveway being coterminous with the easement.
All right.
But I don't know,
The easement's on the other side.
the easement's on the other
We-
side.
we could
driveway's
move
right
it
here,
to-
the easement's
We
right
could
here.
move the building this side and make the easement part of the driveway.
You possibly could. Once again, I haven't read the easement, so I don't really know what it is.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, but you could, but theoretically, I mean, as long as someone could access whatever they're trying to access through your driveway, that would still be maintaining the access easement.
All right. right.
Could,
That's a
could
possibility.
the owner produce a copy of that easement?
Okay.
It's probably in his deed or in his chain of title somewhere.
All
That,
right.
that might be helpful.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Any
Stood
other
on the
question?
side by the-
Any another question?
Any more questions? No.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
to
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before the planning board?
So what are we gonna,
We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so what are we doing with this? Just holding?
It's,
I make a motion to adjourn.
we don't have to do anything with respect to this application. This was just
No, this was just a
review.
feedback, sketch plan conference. more or
Yeah.
less, Which doesn't seem to be a final sketch plan in any respect.
Yeah, I don't understand why they wanna, no, you can't.
My first motion, I don't do a second.
Somebody want a second? Somebody
I'll
want
give you
second?
a sympathy second.
Was a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second that.
Discussion, all in favor?
Say it loud.
No.
Aye, opposed? Meeting's adjourned.